in peace, Jerry.
Is that all the way on the screen?
Uh-huh.
Does it say we're live? Go.
It does.
Yeah. That's the whole intro. Oh my gosh, what is it? Are you copyrighted for search for this?
Even talk without punching each other.
91, 92, 93, 94. Yeah.
We all like to act we're above the Jerry Springer show, but then we all watch like Love is Blind and The Bachelor and shit like that.
I remember at my friend's house, his sisters or whoever, if this show was on, it was on their TV just all the time over there. So I caught a bunch of them because we'd be playing over there all the time, and I mean just little bits of it. But I don't think I ever turned it on purpose myself once. Yeah, that's the intro. Yeah.
Did Jerry have a backlog of tweets where he shat on Trump? Because I always thought that would be funny.
Did he? Like he got?
I don't know. I'm not
he
sure.
got super Trump deranged.
I have no idea what his politics are, but I just think it'd be really funny if out of anyone
he got into this. He got into this post politics. He was a mayor or even as high as like a governor or something like that. Mayor or governor. And he got
caught, a mayor.
He got caught with a prostitute, and it was only after that he got out of politics and then got into politics.
I get what you're saying. I didn't know he was politician first.
He was politician first. Yeah. Jerry Springer, political life. Former mayor of Cincinnati. He was the mayor of Cincinnati before that show. 77 to 88. Served as the 56th mayor. And what party was he with?
I don't know, but there's a interview in 2020 where he slammed Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. That's funny.
Yeah, he was a Democrat. See, that's the only Democrats can come back from stuff like that. And although we never saw that New York mayor come back. What's his name? Because that guy was like an up and
Cuomo?
No, the other one. Cuomo's still too, but the guy way before Cuomo that got caught with all the prostitutes. Like
I don't know.
In the 2000s, around the time Weiner got caught.
I think Weiner was during my mission, so I know nothing about any of that.
Yeah. I type in New York politician caught with prostitutes.
Yeah, can't be too many of those.
1 million hits. Elliot Spitzer. You don't remember that dude?
No.
He was getting all huge and he was all over the news and all that stuff. What was he? He was a governor. Yep, he was the governor when that happened. And it wasn't too long after. That was 2008. So it wasn't too long after the Anthony Weiner stuff hit.
I was wrong. That's not my mission.
There's this whole video by Stephen Michael Davis that kind of points out and makes the case that the Anthony Weiner saga directly led to Hillary Clinton losing, because the whole thing of him getting his stuff turned over, if turning out that he had different sexual things on his computer, then his wife was Hillary Clinton's like aide or something like that, and then they had to like prove the stuff over, and then that stuff that where Comey came out just like 1 week before the election and said to cover his butt, say, "Oh, we did have to put Hillary under investigation. Might have been just enough to put Trump over," and so you can make the entire point that the Weiner showing his wiener to girls on the internet really is what led to Trump. What's up, Maple Lake Mountain?
I guess. Yeah, I guess in 2017, Springer told the National Enquirer, "I could be Trump without the racism." It's like watching Howard. It's like watching Howard Stern grandstand when like, dude, you're not a paragon of morality, buddy. I've seen you combat two different mentally handicapped people in the Battle of the Wits. Like, have you ever seen his Beetlejuice stuff?
Oh yeah.
Don't do those Beetlejuice things and then come at me and act like you're this paragon of virtue. Are you kidding me?
His whole show all through the 90s. I mean, that one I did watch on E. I have to admit to turning that one on myself. I didn't turn on Jerry Springer on myself ever. It's just people around me already had on. But I used to watch the Howard Stern show when they like show the after show on E. And half of it was just him trying to get prostitutes to do weird stuff and talking creepily to the prostitutes, not prostitutes, to the porn stars. But let's look at this. Let's act like this stuff here is this is a super, well, I mean, I guess. I got this ready because I'm like, look at this. We got a comment.
Happens over there. Make sure when you go back to the farm, you take Miss Piggy with you to skin her for some pig.
But that whole show is, if you watch the whole entire thing, it's him platforming people saying stuff to trans people. You know what I mean?
I didn't realize there was a lot. I've seen.
I want to know which
I've seen one of them that had
was it your girls or the transsexual?
My girl.
So tell me any of that, according to modern day current standards, isn't totally sexist, totally racist.
He did say just without the racism, right? Trump without the race. He never said anything about sexism or the phobias
or the transphobias. Well, here you go.
To the guy that was the last guy on stage, you do realize that if you're a man and you get oral sex from a man, you are gay.
No, I'm not gay. Oh shit! I love this.
I pulled out a bunch of them. I was gonna act like they were comments on our show. Like, we got a comment. Here comes a comment. Here's a comment in the comment section.
I got a question for Gamer Boy. Are you the one who keeps saying "yo mama" jokes to me on Fortnite?
Oh, Anita Sarkeesian. Oh, she's coming at us. Oh, Anita. But let's see here. It's like, tell me if
why you three in the back are fighting over a guy whose hairline's pushed back farther than LeBron James.
Tell me that if this wasn't Trump's show, they wouldn't have called it racist, sexist, homophobic, bigotophobic.
Oh, it's definitely rooted in white supremacy.
And watch this. We just barely watched
for the two ladies in the pool. Is that what sperm whales look like?
I watched very little Jerry Springer. I've never seen him do this thing. I didn't realize he just got the whole audience of bloodthirsty people to just like, hey, here's freaks of society. Now be cruel to them.
But then the main thing they were trying to get, the big ratings grabber at that time, was getting people to fight. You know, they got people to fight and had like an onstage thing going on.
No, I watched the midget fight, and that was like one of the first things I saw on Jerry Springer. I was like, oh man, this feels evil. This is
it was evil. But at the same time, too, you didn't have to watch very much of it to see that it was acting. Like there wasn't a person on that who was supersonic real.
Everything was coached. Have you guys mentioned yet the famous story about Jerry Springer getting busted when he was mayor?
That's what Jared.
He had a big scandal because he paid for a prostitute with a personal check.
Yeah, Jared didn't know.
I thought
Jared didn't know that he was. Jared wondered if he got into politics after, and I was telling him, no, he was politics first.
No. He was in politics first. Yeah, he was kind of sort of a respected guy. I mean, he was a mayor, but he paid for prostitutes with checks.
So that's when we looked up if he was.
Holy shit!
So that's what you're talking about. We looked up to see if he was Democrat or Republican.
Don't catch this until Tuesday, honey.
Yeah, and it was Democrat, and then he was bragging that he could be Trump, and then we pulled up Anthony Weiner and Elliot Spitzer, and then I should pull up the video, but there's some video that made the case that Anthony Weiner showing his wiener directly led to Trump getting elected. Directly.
Yeah, I think I remember you showed me that. Like somebody was able to kind of, I mean, who knows, but they were able to make the case with the polls and the numbers and everything.
It was enough for the last little push, and it's what made Comey say he still had to investigate Hillary in that last week. That might have been just the last little bump that pushed him over. The same exact thing where last time the Hunter Biden laptop would have been the bump to push him over, except they properly squashed that. They didn't properly squash the Anthony Weiner thing, the October surprise, to just barely put him over. The same exact thing where last time the Hunter Biden laptop would have been the bump to push him over, except they properly squashed that. They didn't properly squash the Anthony Weiner thing, the October surprise, to just barely put him over. Springer, R.I.P. was talk show kayfabe. Yeah, for sure it was kayfabe. Well, I mean, some of those people were definitely white trash for real or whatever, but they
But everything was coached. Yeah, they were shitty people, but it was still a performance.
Yeah, it was. So looks like Jerry got a haircut since last week. Let's see here. We were just barely looking at this. Right before coming on, we got all this other stuff we're going to talk about, and then Bogosian dropped this thing of NPR dropping this batshit crazy 45 minutes on childhood obesity. Efforts to fight childhood obesity have caused kids to absorb an onslaught of body-shaming messages. We talk about thin privilege, how to neutralize food and the word fat, and how diet culture hurts everyone.
It's funny because this is where my wife actually got into all of this woke nonsense. She became obsessed with the fat activism.
It was her breaking point.
Yeah, she was, and so she was fascinated with it for the longest time. But it was more fringe over the last few years. You know, it was saying things like, like classifying different levels of fat. Like the woman in here calls herself a small fat. Yeah. And there's different levels of fat. There's a mid fat, super fat, and like infinifat. I'm not even kidding. That's an actual ranking that they have is infinifat.
Most children.
Is it like all of the kinds of gays? Like there's otters and bears and twinks.
There's intersectional fatness for sure.
By the time
they like when you talk about this being new, though, because I can tell you that more than 20 years ago, when I was at community college, that was the first time I saw. There were posters on the wall advertising that lady. I forget her name, but she was like the first fat activist who had that. She did that talking series called Fat So. And yeah. And I remember, so that is how long that goes back. That was the early 2000s that I saw.
Didn't she die recently? No, I'm not even kidding.
Just heart failure?
Yeah, I'm not even kidding. It's
these advanced diabetes.
The fat activists are dropping like flies.
This episode basically says give your kids all the food and candy, whatever they want, and that will be the cure.
Oh, she straight up tells you that, like, the interviewer asks, is childhood obesity a problem that should be solved? And she says no.
No, in fact, it's not even unhealthy. In fact, the data and the science, that's largely been debunked. I could unpack that for you, but it would take another 5,000 Dan McClellan TikTok videos.
The scientific consensus is that weight is not something that can be controlled. Oh, McClellan, okay.
Yeah, and we can break down the data for you why it's not true that it's harder for women to get pregnant or more of a health problem for women to get pregnant who are obese and all that sorts of stuff. Fat activists and health at every size provide a huge amount of the mental fuel that keeps me going to the
gym. Those are some of my favorite memes where it's like, what, like, how do you guys stay motivated for the gym? And it pointed to like a poster of a fat activist being like, I'm beautiful just the way I am. the next frame, he's just buff as shit.
Yeah. So then it obviously like breaks down. They say diets don't work, which is a lie. And then they break down about how this is also an intersectional problem. Of course, it's harder for Black women and harder for whoever. And we will get trolls who will be mean to us for saying this stuff on here.
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is let your kids, if your kid wants more cookies and more cookies and more cookies, you just keep giving them more cookies till they destigmatize the cookies.
Like, yeah, she was saying
like that.
She's trying to say that, like, no, what you'll find, she had these two conflicting premises, right? And like premise one was she was trying to explain that there's no such thing as junk food. I don't use the term junk food because there's no good food and bad food. And then she talked about how I don't limit treats, right? There's no restriction on treats. And you'll find that, and she's pitching this as if it's some sort of a plus. You'll find that if you have no restriction on treats, your kids will actually eat less treats. It's like, why does that matter? Why is that a plus? If there's no good foods and bad foods, why would I care if my kids eat less treats or not? And because they're bad, and you know they're bad. You know
I don't
that.
even like to distinguish between treats and their meal when they're eating at dinner if they're having treats at the same time.
You're a terrible person. I'll tell you what, you don't destigmatize them because I spent the last 10 years of my life just eating what I wanted when I wanted, and I got fat as fuck, and I felt disgusting all the time, and I wasted my 20s.
Fat logic is a gold mine. Yeah, well, the truth of it is like it's a pretty good kind of what I'm always harping on with Dan McClellan, the same with this, the same with everything, the cynical theories back with Streeter, is that it's the same game. It's the same game in every place. They go in, they try to dismantle what the standing scientific order of things is by using all these, current day critical theory terms like, well, those ideas were found out by white colonialist men who wrote those ideas in the year 1800s. And all of what we know about health was done for healthy white men who were, and it's had nothing to do with like what women's weight were and that sort of stuff. And then they say all of those studies are flawed. I'm not going to go into detail about why they're flawed, but the data is wrong. But our data, the actual science data, the data, not dogma, our data is going to tell you the truth of the stuff. And then if you look at any of their data, it's all relativized. It's all got an asterisk. It's all got like their own little trickaroo and switcheroo and wordplay, and they're messing with the statistics or messing with the age groups or whatever they want to do. I just saw Dan this week on Twitter saying that social contagion isn't the reason for the spike in I shared with you guys that meme. Dan McClellan tried to say there's no social contagion. It's just the same thing as when left-handedness was suppressed.
Wait a minute. Do you remember Dan's PhD that was not in gender studies? So as a strict credentialist, I dismiss everything that he says about the subject.
That's right.
Stay in your lane, Dan.
He keeps telling
He's
everybody else.
Specialist in cognitive religion, something.
Well, how do we not know? Because he reminds us every other tweet.
Well, plus he actually changes his profession with like every third tweet. It's like linguist here, professional. I don't.
Cognitive scientist here.
Yeah,
cognitive linguist, PhD, cognitive psychologist here.
Bible scholar here.
Data researcher here. Data interpreter here. And you're not all those in your PhD, buddy. Especially, I wouldn't call any of them really a PhD because it's all divinity school.
Yeah,
it's all right though. I think even humanities is phony, Dan. So and I can say that. It's true. It's phony degree. It is phony.
You can fall back on your degree in good God, humanities.
It's true. It is phony degree.
When I did my recent dive into old versus new Simpsons, I got to a new episode with Dr. Hibbert, and it was alarming. Like, it was jarring. I didn't realize they had changed his voice, or at least I forgot.
Oh no, yeah, that was recent. It's ridiculous. It's funny though. I work with a guy in real life that has that laugh thing. The Dr. Hibbert just laugh at everything thing.
Oh yeah.
I work with that guy.
My grandpa was that guy, except it was a different laugh, but there was never not a.
Well, did you see how they fixed?
He's like Popeye.
It was either Lenny or Lou. One of them. Their fix for them is just get rid of them. I'm pretty sure they just totally got rid of a character.
Didn't they want to make him gay or something?
Oh, is that what they did? I don't know. I just don't care about Simpsons past the year 2000.
I meant Carl, not Lenny.
Yeah,
I thought they talked about making him gay or something like that.
I thought so. I don't know. That show is just cartoon zombies.
Oh, it's terrible.
That look like the people I used to love.
Yep, they're wearing the skin suit of the Simpsons.
I was going to say also about Dan and the divinity schools, because for the longest time, when you went to divinity school, it was for training to go into religion. And there was like a brief period of time where it's like, well, no, it's studying religion. And now it's just back to cranking out religious apologists like Dan.
Yeah.
Like he's just the Blue Church guy now. He went to divinity school for Blue Church, and that's what he does now.
As I've said before, I graduated the magna cum laude from that stuff. So like if they say I don't know what I'm talking about, I agree because none of us do. But what it comes down to is, think of this. You just had a bunch of teachers who were just recently Orthodox graduates like Dan McClellan's, and to get an A out of that guy, all you had to do is appease his ideology. That's all you had to do. That's all you had to do. You didn't have to learn
like church.
You didn't have to learn nothing. You just had to appease that guy's ideology in a paper. And basically, they were such control freak douches from the classroom. They'd basically tell you the paper they wanted you to write. And so then you just, you pick out the book, they tell you the paper they wanted you to write, you go put it on paper.
I always kind of picture.
They don't care if I remember I got an A on a paper that had so many red marks on it because I didn't take any time. I turned it in a day later. I got lazy with it. And the teacher looked through it and saw that like I had just a bunch of typing errors, and just doing that. There's red marks all through it. It's still an A.
No, just like in seminary, like you don't lose points because you misspell anything in the Articles of Faith. You just repeat the Articles of Faith and you're right.
Yeah.
And that's what the humanities is.
I feel like graduating. I feel like graduating in humanities is kind of comparable to when I graduated DARE in 6th grade. Because
no, you got a T-shirt. A T-shirt. I got a T-shirt with his diploma.
No, when I graduated DARE, it was funny because I did nothing in DARE. I just sat. I viewed it as like a free hour where I could just turn my brain off and like draw Kenny dying in South Park or whatever. That's most of what I did. And it's funny because you have this whole book you're supposed to fill out, and you have all these challenges that you can do to get. And I didn't do any of the challenges, right? Like dress up in your Sunday best every Wednesday. Don't drink any soda for this amount of time. Don't watch any TV for this amount of time. And it's funny because it's one of the best decisions I made as a kid was not to do any of those because like the prize was you get like a basketball, which I already had, or a little remote control car if you do all of them. And like, man, that's a lot of work for not much reward. Anyway, he goes to look at he goes at the end of the year to look through my book and it's just totally blank. I haven't filled out none of this. I've done none of the letters I'm supposed to write to people. And he's like, you didn't do any of it. And I was like, no, I didn't really want to. And he's like, but don't you want to graduate DARE? I was like, I didn't know we graduated it and stuff. And he's like,
if you don't graduate, are you doomed to a life of drug addiction?
That's the funniest part is once we got to our senior year, they took me back as one of the DARE role models, and because the DARE officer's daughter was one of my friends, and I was asking her like, why me? And she's like, well, okay, look at everybody else from that 6th grade class. Like you're one of the only guys that didn't do any drugs or drink any alcohol since that. But it's funny because he looks through my book, it's totally blank, and he's like, well, are you gonna do drugs? I was like, no. He's like, you can graduate. It's like, okay, I guess.
So I had a friend in high school who was a very good football player, state and all that stuff. And so then he got invited to make one of those DARE commercials. And when he was on that commercial, I knew he was like one of the biggest druggies around, and he knew it, and we all knew it. But I don't know. I guess that's what they do with that stuff. We all know that's what's going on. It's
like when Bill Clinton talks about the sanctity of marriage.
Yeah, but I'm so tired. Like you see on like the Latter-day Lobsters, even on Thoughtful Faith and all those guys, that they still kind of get impressed with the McClellan maneuvering, and it's the same thing as getting. I think you can see it a bit better with this fat logic thing. If you watch this lady, like how they go in and try to dismantle what's common sense in the fat logic world, but that's all they've been doing in humanities, and then they're trying to like evangelicals bring it to every portion of the world. And when you know it, it's maybe if you're trained in it, it's way less impressive, but it seems like everybody should be getting the hang of what that shtick is, to use Jonathan's word he started calling it. It's a shtick. It's an easy shtick.
It's a trick.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is like, we almost need somebody to be like a James Randi, like, or, like, this is how you do faith healing. Let me show you on the stage, and that thing is like, that's what we need is, I mean, Peter Boghossian, some people are kind of doing it. James Lindsay talks about it, but wouldn't it be something if we had somebody actually do the performance and say, watch me deconstruct?
Well, you can
even get rid of that. He's like, name a thing, I'll deconstruct it. Like pet ownership, deconstructed.
Yeah. Which Derrida used to do in his classes. That's what I told people. Like he used to like bring me something here, and I try to bring me a signified that has a signifier, which is just basically like there's no word you can tell me that actually matches the thing you're trying to make it match. But that's going into the real version of deconstruction. But if you listen to Dan here, you could apply it to what's happened to. Just imagine one of these donks walking into the Star Wars room, one of these donks walking into the He-Man room.
Well, I feel like I feel like what these especially bold manipulators do, like McClellan, is they just count on your good-natured projection, right?
Yeah.
Like you interpreting everything to like crazy amounts of charitability, right? Because that's all of what he does is he'll say the overwhelming scientific consensus in biblical scholarship is bleh, whatever my renegotiation of the text is. And when I hear that, when I hear somebody say the overwhelming consensus, I think, damn, I wouldn't say that without a damn good reason. Therefore, he wouldn't either.
Yeah.
And it is a lot easier to see in this NPR lady's interview because she does the same things as Dan, except, like you said, she does it with more absurd claims, things that are just intuitively
the
bullshit.
overwhelming scientific consensus is that diets don't work. Like that is a big fat claim, and I'm sure they have asterisks next to it that they can go back and defend it like douche canoes. But it's just an untruth. It's just it's a lie.
I remember years and years ago when a friend of ours was saying like, "Oh, I only eat 500 calories a day, but I still gain weight." And you just said like, "You're not breaking the laws of thermodynamics. Nobody is." Come on. We are thermodynamic biological machines. All the rules that apply to everything else in the physical universe apply to our bodies.
It's crazy. My body just does actually make something from nothing.
And you can just like look at like who were considered like the fat freaks at the circuses and stuff 100 years ago. And
there's so many different ways to disprove it. Like you can go back to a Simpsons episode where Homer had to gain a bunch of weight to become obese and considered like disabled, and it was like 260 pounds or something like that.
Yeah,
but
it's the same thing as Dan's credulous post of saying that, oh yeah, the only reason trans stuff wasn't there in the past is the same way that we tried to suppress left-handedness in the past. And it's categorically a different thing, because maybe you could even say that or whatever, but the difference is that if you left alone most of those left-handers, they wouldn't have accidentally have become right-handers. But if you leave alone most of those transing kids, of those transing kids are going to grow out of it. And that's the issue. That's why it's a social contagion the other direction. It's a category error that you're making there. But like I said, this guy, all the IPs, imagine every single IP and some academic, whatever, smart person, not just at an IP, like He-Man, they did it at Bud Light. This guy was walked into Bud Light and done it in his own ways through HR departments. This guy's walked in to the Army, for hell's sake. These guys have walked in to any corporation. They've walked into to Star Wars, He-Man, Marvel, whatever, and they just start making these arguments that first it's the Foucauldian thing of who's to say what's to say, the history, what's to say, who's to say, what's to say, what's to say, dismantle it all. Oh, who even knows what tradition was? Oh, why was that good? It was actually bad. Oh, everything was bad and harmful and bad and terrible. And oh, goodness. And since we can renegotiate it, we should renegotiate it into our stuff here. And if you're not, you're a bigot. If not, you're a bigot. We don't want to be bigots. We don't want to be bigots.
Circumstances throughout all time, it has to be dynamic. It has to change. It has to be negotiable. And again,
can you hold the temple recommend right now? Like if we showed this to his bishop right before his temple recommend interview, can he hold a temple recommend?
Bishops
are the same answer.
Bishops are pushovers.
They don't do it nowadays. But if this guy can like fleece half of like Thoughtful Saints and fleece half of Latter-day Lobsters, you know what I mean? He can fleece whoever.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's the whole point. Is like Jared said. Some people say parasitize it on. I say it's kind of like people's brains translate it into liberalese. Like they translate it into, like, you're not listening to the person and the crap that they're pulling here. You're translating it into your soft, squishy thing and not realizing the Hurley boy game. If you go back and listen to our episode on the Hurley boy game that's going on, like, just let me wear your underwear. All I want to do is wear your underwear. And then somebody else, let the boy wear your underwear. You bigot. You bigot. I just want to diddle your kids. I just want to diddle your kids. It's not. I mean, they used to do it.
He can't help the way he is. God damn it!
to use the exact stuff. There you go. That's the early thing. But like, listen, Foucault literally wrote about that. I forget what the exact story is, but like, go listen. There's a story he wrote about a little kid getting diddled inside of a farm in like an old neighborhood, like an old town, and saying the kid gets diddled by just one of like the older adult men. And that's how that was for ages and ages in those towns. And who's to say that was always wrong and inappropriate? And then of course, then you have the Farley character come along and go, so I don't know. I mean, who's to say that that's been wrong? It's been there since forever. And then here comes Farley. Let the guy get on the kid. It's been going on for millennia. What are your problem? And bigot, you bigot. You bigot.
At some point, you just need to be kind of a dick back. And when they say like, who's to say what should be the age of consent? I am.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that 18 is probably a good place. So let's just keep it there. Yeah, at least let's Chesterton Spence this bitch and explain to me, because I can explain to you why I think it's there.
So I don't know if I can post it because it's inside like the group, but one guy came in talking about, hey, postmodernism's been okay, guys. It's not been bad because you can deconstruct what was bad. And then
funny because that guy's also a huge Dan McClellan fan.
Yeah, he's huge. and it goes, but then you can just reconstruct what is true out of it. And then you got, that's just what it is. And you go, that's not what postmodernism. You translated it into liberalese.
Yeah.
You translated it into what the thing we were doing in the Enlightenment all along. That's not what these skeptics of the Enlightenment are talking about. These guys are talking about completely dismantling in total, and then anything goes. And then, hey, paradise will come if we just let all the kids eat all the cookies. That's how it comes. And I might be after some cookies myself.
Yeah.
So when did this whole deconstruction?
It all comes together. Hey, little kid, how would you like all the cookies you could eat?
Yeah.
When did this whole deconstruction?
You're the witch. You're the witch at Hansel and Gretel. That's when it started. It's back when whoever wrote Hansel and Gretel. That's where it started.
Because
how long it's been going.
I started Fathers and Children by Turgenev, right? And that was written in it was like 1840, I think, or something like that. And so Bazarov is one of the characters in it, and he's known as one of the best portrayals of a nihilist, right? And he wasn't just a nihilist. It was he won't shut up about deconstructing it. He's arguing with an older man about it, and the old man told him like you can dismantle all these things you want, but don't you have to build sometimes? And that was his defense was, well, who's to say? It's not your place to say that I need to build. I was like, holy shit.
They can't.
He thinks that's I'm to say, motherfucker. Okay, I'll say it. I'm a person. Who's to say what gender is? I am. I'll look at you and I can tell what gender you are.
And so that's where you see like the other side of it, of the critical end of it, of the critical theorists coming in, that everything is just the shittiest possible take on people's intentions everywhere for all things. And it can only be that interpretation forever. If I had to, because I listened to Larsen and DeLynn go off this week again and just do the same thing. Like, is it a cult or is it not a cult? And some of the stuff they say is true, some of it's not, some of it's whatever, but it's for sure got that critical theory angle of just all the intentions must be pure shit intentions. That was the only intentions that were ever there. And I think you are just not being an actual studier of history or an actual honest, truthful investigator of time if you think all the intentions were shitty, nefarious, postmodern power moves. Those weren't the only intentions. And you're evaluating the world wrong if that's what you think the only intentions are.
Is because the product of the Enlightenment was this notion that, it has to be consistent, it has to be unified, it has to all be perfectly rational. And
these people sneer or say, if they're saying postmodernism, you're just using these big words because they're going to gaslight you if you're talking about it. But I mean, there he is just talking about skepticism of the claims of the Enlightenment, that there can be truths.
I don't think that most people who live religious lives do so because they find it perfectly rational.
Yeah.
I think that most people who live religious lives do so because it makes them happy, because they find value in it, because they find meaning in it. And that does not always necessarily have to do with whether or not your propositions are true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
sounds like politics, huh, Dan?
More about, is your love of God genuine? I think we can find a lot more value and utility in the scriptures.
So
if it is
utilitarianism, just right back to utility and all that stuff, which you could say the pragmatists do it, but then we know that his whole thing is to push his politics into it. And that's when that video I was talking about Hogwarts last week, if you look it up, what he says it all devolves to, you when you're in this mind frame of just power, just renegotiation, it can only turn into pure politics. It can only turn into that. That's why even our beer is political now.
Have you showed Jared's new Dan memes?
Yeah, let's go to those right now.
Because those are good.
God, it was a response to.
I didn't even see them. I don't know why I missed them because it was in the middle.
Oh, I loved them. And those things like we got to put them in the comments for people to show to Dan on Twitter.
Yeah,
we can.
I'm almost there.
Let me see if I can find
I don't know if I have permission to show some of these Balenciaga ones.
I'm excited for those.
Can you see that?
Yes.
When McClellan hasn't mentioned his PhD in 4 tweets.
It almost looks like his shirt. You could almost say his shirt looks like it says McClellan in there.
So it's funny because it was in response, because that's the only one I sent to him, right? The other one
sent this one to McClellan?
Yeah, well, it was in response.
Funny.
Because this guy, some Republican dude said the biggest problem in this country is that we've turned away from God. And McClellan responded, "Hi, I'm a Christian." No, you're not. A PhD in theology and religion, and a specialist in the cognitive science of religion. The only war you state, blah 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 blah.
That one was so bad because like that's just kind of like just a general statement that somebody puts, and they're like coming with that kind of pedantry behind
I know.
it.
He's like, I haven't mentioned, and that was, I was like, oh my god,
I'm gonna go to.
He's like a fucking CrossFit vegan who won't stop.
Dang.
By the way, if I had to respond to that statement, I'd be like, well, which God? I mean, narrow it down a bit, because what are you talking about?
Sure, it's a cheesy thing to say, and I could shit on it.
Here it is. Is that Republican Eli?
I'm a Christian, a PhD in theology.
Yeah, you're
religion and a specialist in cognitive science of religion. But you're not. You're not that last thing. You're really not.
The only way your statement has any relationship whatsoever to reality, come on, like that part of that sentence right there is so douchey. The only way your statement has any relationship whatsoever to reality, like you don't get to say stuff like that, postmodernist. You don't get to be the caller of balls and strikes of reality when everything can be reality.
But he does it so blatantly. He basically tells you that
reality.
No, he tells you in his videos that he shits on renegotiations when they're more traditional, right? Things like if it's the nuclear family is ideal or what, that's actually a renegotiation of the text, and there's actually no evidence. The data do not point to that in this exact thing. But then he goes to the next video is him talking about like homosexuality in the Bible and be like, well, actually, it condemns a certain type of homosexuality, and it's really only the receiver that it's condemning. And we're really not sure if what they meant by that. So we should renegotiate the text to best fit our value. Like, no, you're calling for the thing that before you said was shitty. And also, what kind of a defense is actually God was just talking about the butt fucky, not the butt fucker? Because if you're the butt fucker and the butt fucky is the one that's sinning, well, aren't you kind of sinning by proxy? Like you're causing the butt fucky to sin by butt fucking him?
Well, I've seen some people answer that on Twitter and whatever, that like God doesn't say anything about furries and stuff like that either.
Yeah, he didn't think he had to.
What is RWA and SDO? I don't know what that means.
No clue.
You mean deeper commit to RWA and SDO? What is that? I have no idea.
I gotta tell you, I get angry anytime I see an acronym. I'm like, this fucker spends way too much time on Reddit, and that should be illegal.
Right-wing authoritarianism. Right-wing authoritarianism.
Yeah, probably.
No, every time he mentions this thing where he does like, I'm a Christian, a PhD, and all that, we can just wipe that out and write in, I'm smarter than you. That's really all his whole thing is, like, I'm smarter than you, fucker, shut up. Because he's an egotist and a narcissist. RWA.
RWA is right-wing authoritarian. It's right-wing authoritarian.
Oh. Oh, right-wing authoritarian. The authoritarian tries to call out authoritarians. What a piece of
he
shit.
he says that all the time too. It's like it's just your right-wing authoritarianism. And you never once mentioned
Solar Dynamics Observatory. That's a satellite.
It's not that. He's never once mentioned left-wing authoritarianism, although I bet you he would then turn around and like quote Horkheimer and Adorno, who claimed there was no such thing as left-wing authoritarianism, and the entirety of the academy ran with that because it came from those two critical theorists like 50 years ago when they just announced it out of their dumb butts. But there was only stuff like very recently where some stuff came out of academics saying, hey guys, it turns out there can be some left-wing authoritarianism. That the academy said, whoa, what? You know, and they were literally running off of claims from Adorno and Horkheimer. That's literally what they were going off of. They wrote like a book about fascism and authoritarianism. And if Dan or somebody repeats that, they're just repeating those Frankfurt Schoolers who you're an anti-Semite for noticing.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago when I argued with those musicians, the Marxist musicians backstage, because I mentioned if fascism actually means anything, it's the marriage of state with corporations, and they almost in unison yelled at me, "That's what Republicans are doing!" And I just ended the conversation.
With all the corporate,
we're not going to talk about Twitter, Facebook,
all these corporations with their iron crosses and swastikas.
Yeah, no, but no, it's the Democrats, you jackasses. The FBI went to Facebook and Twitter, lied to them about the laptop, and said, don't talk about this right before the election, you dingbats. Those are the fascists.
Yeah. It's a social dominance orientation.
Social dominance orientation.
Which Dan, just like Kevin put on the meme of the McClellan Trump meme, he is the #1 bestseller in woke projection. Like, there's not a thing that he talks about that's not
social dominance is only a sin if you're receiving. If you're the top, that's not.
You can do that right out of Paul. You can make that oh my goodness, that's perfect. That's a perfect
it almost seems like it's on purpose when he does it. Like he's that one video. It was such a mask off moment where he's talking about how people, if they want their interpretation of the Bible to be validated, but it's really, really difficult, that they'll just prove that it's not a complete impossibility. I was like, that's what you did explicitly in your own words with the Jonathan and David were butt buddies thing. Like that was, so there's no way, it can't be a coincidence, right? That he subconsciously projected with those exact words, the thing that he did. Like, is he doing this shit on purpose?
Well, I know sometimes that's what I sometimes wonder if he's pure Machiavellian, because he knows that the way I can hide from this is by I know what I'm doing and I will directly accuse my opponents of it. I mean, that's Saul Alinsky stuff. Some people who are in this world, especially downstream from the academics, don't know that they're projecting so hard. But when I call it pure Machiavellianism is when they know and they are using it as a tactic, the projection. Like it's the Darvo thing, the deny, the Darvo thing.
Darvo. Deny, accuse, reverse victim, and offender.
And when you know that you're doing Darvo, for sure, because people can unawares do Darvo stuff, but when you purposely know that it's a tactic to get out of stuff, you're a politician and a Machiavellian. But I repeat myself. Let's see here. We're gonna go back.
Who came up with this, by the way? When is this Darvo concept actually formulated like this?
I don't know, but if you
I
read
wouldn't be
the
surprised
rules,
if it came out of
Rules for Radicals from Saul Alinsky, they basically just announced this is what you do it, and of course Hillary Clinton did all of her like master's thesis on that. People don't even remember that. When I'm in a credentialist competition and my opponent is McClellan, and then
that's my favorite one.
This one's perfect. It's
really exactly right.
McClellan when he renegotiates the text, McClellan when you renegotiate. That actually speaks true to all postmodernists, really, because like they're from the beginning they noticed. Even Leotard admits it. They noticed that their own shit deconstructs themselves, and their dumb idea of no big narratives is itself a big narrative. They noticed all their contradictions right off the bat, and so then they just through sheer anger say, well, you can't do it because it's power when you do it. Yeah, but you've already admitted it's power and you do it too. Shut up off right-wing authoritarian. When I say right-wing authoritarian, we already know socially that just carries in the gut more pain for like the average normie than left-wing authoritarianism does. So I win. So I win. I just get to act like I can say the word fascist, which we got to get to Jim Bennett. Although
that Midnight Mormons with Jim Bennett, it's kind of interesting.
Before Bennett, let's take a look at another super smart scientist who set the world straight on sciencey stuff. This is The Amazing Atheist.
Oh boy!
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
I can say like I was only ever peripherally aware of this guy. He was never a part of my.
He was huge on Reddit.
Like, dude, I tried. Yeah. I tried with him because his heyday was when I was watching all the atheist shit, and like I watched so much of his shit trying to get into it, and just. I was like, this is the kind of thing I should be into. It wasn't even like Dillahunty. Like Dillahunty, I almost immediately discarded because like, okay, whatever. This is fine, but it's not Dawkins, it's not Hitchens. So then I get into Amazing Atheist. I was like, I can't do this guy. He's not funny. Yeah. He's not quick.
He's not original.
He was just the first guy putting out the most content on YouTube when YouTube wasn't that yet. Like the same time frame as Venom Feign X. And the same time frame as like Thunderfoot, when there was only so many channels, he was the guy dropping the atheist stuff. And I guess he was kind of the first to get to some of the more basic arguments and then put them in 7-8 minute videos. And so they'd get shared all over Reddit, and then they'd do those soy jack faces for it. And that I'd say for Redditors, younger Redditors, he was probably bigger than Hitch was in the 2000s, you know. But here he is doing the Dillahunty dance that we say that actually somebody showed the meme to McClellan. Let me see if I can find that here. Somebody sent this meme to McClellan. God is real. How can you believe if you don't have any physical proof? I'm actually a woman. So true. It's really kind of.
Please get an education. Oh, irony.
I love it because then they always come back with that whole he only did elementary school biology. And the idea is that once you get past like elementary school biology tells you that XX is woman, XY is man, and then as soon as you get past that, it's like nope, the opposite. Nothing is true actually is what we really think.
So I answered that, but probably like ignored to hell. I mean, he never responds to me. I bet he has me like shadowbound or muted or something because sometimes I'm in there fast and he still just doesn't respond to me. So I think I'm kind of muted from him on that. Although I know I'm blocked.
Well, that he probably also. I mean, if anything, I think he knows better than to try to fight with you because
if he knows me, who knows?
I think he can tell pretty quickly when it's somebody that he doesn't want to argue with because man, he blocked all of us right away.
Yeah. Yeah, no. We know it takes 15 years. We know it takes 15 years detached from the real world with a blue church humanities orthodox inculcation to achieve your galaxy brain McData. And let's go back to The Amazing Atheist. Where did it go? Oh, what's this one?
That thing.
That's the clit thing.
Oh yeah, Jonathan sent us
the clit butt plug.
There's so much stupid going on, man. Yeah, I might have to because if I click through them, I might share something I'm not supposed to. Hold on. Yeah. No, it was only 2 over. Dang it, I couldn't see it. Okay. Well, it's just back to Amazing Atheist and J.K. Rowling noticing him. I mean, I guess I'd be impressed with him like after all those years dwindling on Reddit. He gets noticed by J.K. Rowling.
I'm surprised. Like I didn't know anybody even talked about him anymore.
Well, they weren't for a while. Every couple of years he kind of resurfaces for a minute, and it's because he just does something unhinged. Like he did a bunch of weird unhinged shit, stupid. And then got on Twitch and Sitchin Adam, and like he was wearing this weird war paint. He kind of knows how to be enough of a lol cow intentionally that people will talk to him. Once they actually confront him, he's terrible. Like he backpedals on fucking everything.
Yeah. When he goes on Sitchin Adam, he just
girl dicks, pregnant men, girl dicks.
J.K. Rowling says, say what you like about gender. And this was after him kind of spinning out, because we had, I don't know if I can pull that up, but somebody had already come at him earlier that day saying, he put up a post saying, you guys, nobody's going to judge you if you suck girl wiener. Nobody's going to judge you for that. You can get over yourselves. And he put that out, and that kind of went viral because everybody's like, dude, you're supposed to be the hyper rationals, whatever. He's like, what's wrong with saying females have a wiener and it's fine if you do oral with them? So then JK notices it. He freaked out first because he was gonna put it in our faces, and puts this thing: pregnant men, girl dicks, pregnant men, girl dicks, pregnant men, girl dicks, pregnant. That's the state of atheism plus, folks. Say what you like about gender identity ideology. You can't deny it's attracted some of the world's greatest thinkers, says J.K. Rowling. The Amazing Atheist Anne McClellan, who says, get an education. I wonder if he thinks Amazing Atheist has had sufficient education.
And we have not. Her snark is getting refined over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's good.
So do you think if you put that to Dan McClellan, would you say is Amazing Atheist properly educated and we are not properly educated? McClellan, is that what you're saying?
I don't know. You should just credential us back. Be like, I graduated magna cum laude with this bullshit, man.
Yeah, except it's not PhD. I ain't got no PhD. I was looking into going back to get the PhD just so that shut up for forever. And I don't want to go sit through all that crap, and I'd have to regurgitate more of those lying papers. But here he was: the Bible is bullshit. The Quran is a lie. The Bhagavad Gita did not fall from the sky, but there's such things as female penis. Yep. And John was like going to make like it's kind of going with that post we wanted to make from like the Fly to Dragons, where Flip's joke that he made that science, astrology, chemistry, and the dragons, all the heads blow up, the 7 heads blow up, and then we were gonna have Dilla Hunty's head pop in, or Bill Nye the Science Guy's head pop in. But look, the Amazing Atheist just did the joke for us right here. Yeah. But females have a penis, or men can menstruate from Dilla Hunty.
Yeah, some men menstruate. Boop.
Pop. All the heads pop right back on. And that's just been our point. That's all been our point. Is we thought we were beating the dragon of mystical thinking, and no. The Amazing Atheist. What were we going to go to? Oh, to the. You guys want to look at a couple more memes from the thread, or do you want to talk about Jim Bennett?
Hey, we're up for whatever. We definitely
How do I change my family's view on communism?
Oh, that was funny.
That was so funny. Oh my god, that was exceptionally bad because I was just I finished The White Pill, and he goes through Poland in painful detail. Like I don't know how you could possibly talk to one of these people who lived through that shit.
Did he talk about the famous lines for stores? Like, because the products were so scarce that when something showed up at the stores, there would be lines around the block, and it got to the point where like people would just go and stand in a line without even knowing what was at the end of it, just because they figure, well, everybody's in line, there's got to be something there.
Oh god!
And there's somebody actually made a board game that's based on the shortage economy of Poland, and it's like Monopoly, except it's like you're trying to get supplies for your child's birthday, and it explains how hard it was under communism just to do something simple like that.
Yeah, I heard a joke one time of communism, and it was in like Poland or that sort of area, and they said something about a guy wanted to go buy a car, and he said, you know, this car is not going to be available for 2.5 years, but could you come back for 2.5 years? And the person says, 2.5 years in the morning or 2.5 years in the afternoon? He goes, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, the afternoon. He's like, oh, good, because the plumber's coming in the morning.
That's an exact joke that Michael Malice tells in the White Pill.
Oh, really? Yeah, because it's supposedly like a famous joke from the Russia or the Polish. You know, Forrest says Michael Shermer's had a good take. Yeah, Michael Shermer's good, and you know he even goes hard at QAnon guys on the other flip end. But you know he's going on Mormon Stories next week.
Yeah,
and
that's so funny.
It blows our mind because I mean we're big Michael Shermer fans,
that.
and
I hope he continues to get these people. Like he got Stephen Hassan, and that was kind of funny to watch him basically beg Stephen Hassan to call Mormonism a cult. So
please say the words for my show, please.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for these guys to come in here and be like, I don't know, man. I looked into this Mormonism stuff, and I think it's nonsense, but it doesn't sound authoritarian.
So one of the things,
like it's built into Mormonism that belief is a personal choice. Well, okay.
So one of the things, I mean, I was hoping because the dude from Mumford & Sons interviewed Boghossian this week, and in that interview, they talked about Michael Shermer. And on Mormon Stories, like a year ago, they had on Anthony Magnavosco, who uses street epistemology, who comes from Peter Boghossian. And half of me was just kind of like, because I know Jonathan's kind of trying to like show the stuff to Bill Real a little bit and saying, hey, would you guys rethink some of this stuff a little bit of what's going on here? And like, I'm pretty sure because Shermer goes hard at QAnon, John DeLynn will coax it out of him. He'll sit down in front of him. They'll probably just all go hard at QAnon and then never once mention how Shermer with Boghossian and with all those other guys also go hard at this stuff. Like DeLynn's just going to dodge it.
Dude, the QAnon shit was wild as it was happening like in real time because I had a friend that kept sending me these links from 4chan. So I'd jump on a 4chan and see what they were saying. And it was all that shit like Trump's going to be murdered in the street today, but it's just going to be a body double. So don't worry. And then the real Trump's going to come out and actually just walk on and be. And I was like, each time that thing that you said was going to happen doesn't happen. How do you not just immediately stop trusting that?
Yeah.
The thing with QAnon is I never encountered QAnon in the wild. Not once. Oh, no. Ever.
I did. I met one guy, and this is part of the problem with it, is the guy's the sweetest person you'll ever meet in your life. He'll give you a shirt off his back, and all he does is go to his job every single day at some car shop, and he's forever worked at a car shop, and he's just one of those guys in the here and there who whisper to you like, "Did you hear the stuff that Trump's coming back?" Like that's who they are, you know? But
yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, I mean, nobody in conservative media, everybody in conservative media just shut down QAnon. You know, like Tucker, Shapiro. I mean, the Republican Party, they all said like, no. I mean, if they even talked about it, it was just to denounce it. You know, it was like it's a subculture within conservatism, unlike Blue Anon, which is the Democratic Party platform.
I mean, Glenn Greenwald did some great episodes this week on the way that they would seed stories, like the White House or whatever would seed a story. It's the same way that Dick Cheney kind of used to do it with the Middle East, but like he'd go seed the story, and then somebody would ask him about it, and then he'd say, "I don't know, it's what it says in the New York Times." But you were the one who seeded it to the New York Times. And that's what they did with the Hunter Biden laptop. That's what they did with all sorts of stuff, and some of that's coming out through the Twitter leak.
Boy, oh boy, those are fun.
Well, what were you just Boghossian? Yeah, but Boghossian's good friends with Shermer, and Shermer's good kind of on all fronts as far as like anything skeptic goes.
Yeah.
But
he's an actual skeptic.
But Shermer's also great too, in the sense of like nobody's been harder on Deepak Chopra than Shermer. And guess who one of his best friends is? Deepak Chopra. Like they became great friends after he just kind of shredded him up. Yeah, and he went and visited him at his place and all that sorts of stuff. And he doesn't back off that he thinks that what he's doing is some bullshit and all that sorts of stuff. But he believes that that Deepak believes, you know, in his stuff. You know, he doesn't think he's pure, you know, just pure in it for the money or whatever. But that's because they interacted a whole ton.
It was one of the earliest, like, in the new atheism internet was, I'm sure the Deepak Chopra generator, like somebody produced a website that'll just give you a random formulated Deepak Chopra quote for you. And it was like magic because it's indistinguishable from stuff he says.
Mm-hmm. That's
not the Mumford & Sons guy, is it?
That's some other guy. That's the Mumford & Sons guy. Yeah,
Marshall.
He's now doing stuff for the Spectator, and he had this interview with Bogosian. He got canceled because he said, I looked at Andy Knows stuff, which if you still watch Andy Knows stuff, all he does is show videos that are undeniable of some violence happening. And
Andy Knows a conspiracy theorist who just shows videos of events as they unfold.
That was one of the things during the summer of love and all that sort of stuff that just melted my brain, because on Twitter every single night you could watch Andy Knows videos and see the people doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And then people say to your face that, like, it's all a lie. What you're seeing is a complete lie. You're them blowing up and lighting these buildings on fire. And then those yellow shirt moms who came in acting like they were there for peace didn't get involved at tearing the stuff up themselves too. I saw them on video in the same shirt doing it.
Yeah.
No, you're lying eyes. Fascists are making you see that.
I live a block and a half away from where the cop car was turned on its top and lit on fire.
Jeez.
You know, like,
you didn't see it.
Yeah.
But it was all a lie. Like, in fact, I mean, I remember I got blocked on Facebook from a friend for saying, like, no, I saw it. And she kept saying, like, no, it's not real. And I'm like,
yeah.
Like, I live there.
I went through that argument a bunch of times, but this guy got kicked out of a whole band for just saying, like, his reporting's pretty solid, and that's about it.
Well, he already got like the year before that by taking a picture with Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he was already on the rocks.
Yeah, then he was doing a book club during COVID, and he's like, "Here's a good book," and it was Andy Knows book.
Yeah.
Like Andy Knows, who got the shit kicked out of him by Antifa, and we're supposed
to kill him. They tried to kill him.
No, none of that happened.
Oh.
Antifa's not real. It's not centralized.
It's just an idea, guys.
I've got that book
it's just an idea. Yeah, I mean, I will never let NPR or anybody else that published it forget the 93% peaceful thing. Because, like, holy shit, what, like, the most amazing piece of evil sophistry is, it's actually okay. It's 93% peaceful. You know, which always says, like, well, my parents' marriage was 93% peaceful, so that's okay, I guess.
What stuff? Flores says that he's consistently skeptical, which I think is true. He holds pretty hard. Although, yeah, he does he gets. I think he's wrong on. He holds hard to some libertarian stuff, and in some of those instances, like if they talk about like elementary schools or something like that, and people are pushing back on elementary schools and what they're putting in elementary schools, and then the libertarians say, "No, you can't tell anybody what to do anywhere." You say, but that's already the state. Like it's already the state, and you're telling this. So I mean, you can't. There's Reason TV gets into that too. Reason TV is always kind of constantly like, no, the second you do anything using the state at all, or any law, or any idea, or it's teachers in their speech, it's pressuring down their free speech. But no, they're government employees for a government position.
Yeah.
Get rid of the government in position or whatever, and maybe you can do that. But I don't know what you, Troy, think Shermer's gets off about. But some of those libertarian positions, and they're so quick to scream at any right-winger who dares to make any rule or law or any sort of thing like that. But then they're always kind of like a little bit hard at, they never quite say it that hard at the left, who's just constantly in every policy everywhere all the time. Well, if a right-winger does anything to roll back a policy, that's using the state too. You know, why are you guys always facing that direction?
I've been thinking about this because when I was younger, I got real butthurt because there's this local news guy who was doing a thing about how Idaho's schools are so terrible. And it's the only time I've ever called into a show because he was saying, what should we do about the schools? And because public schools should public schools teach blah or whatever. And I called him and I was like, if we just got rid of public schools, none of this would be a problem. And he laughed at me and he hung up. And I got so butthurt over that. But over the years I was like, no, I was being the moron because like this guy's talking about a real problem, and I'm coming up with a fictional solution, like something that's just so far out of the realm of possibility that it can't happen. And that's kind of that's the sense I get. I love Michael Malice. I love The White Pill. It's a great book. It's terrible and difficult to read, but like whatever he talks about is anarchism. I can't. I'm like, this doesn't sound like a real position to me. You can't really be that much of an anarchist because that seems like you're just removing yourself from making any decisions, because like if you say no, all government intervention is wrong or whatever, no, we're not talking about what is right and wrong explicitly here. We're talking about the better of two options that are reasonable. You're talking about a solution that just can't happen, that won't happen.
The libertarian anarchists have the same thing that the communists have, where they act like the state came down from heaven and was imposed on humanity and not a product of it. You know, like that's my big thing with them, is they're always like, well, what if we just organize society like by agreeing amongst each other how we'll organize? Like, we're there. This is it.
I know.
Here we are.
So, but I get some of Malice's point that if you listen to him, because it's usually only when someone's kind of really pushing back on him that he'll admit this stuff. But his position is generally like, I got to take that extreme because it's the losing one, and everything else is the Leviathan in the state, and that wins. And so somebody's got to be all the way over here saying no, zero. We're doing with zero, and then of course the dialectic in the middle is going to end up somewhere in the middle of that. But we got to start way over here, or it's not even going to be.
Yeah, I think Malice is generally sincere with it. It's just the people I encounter online. They almost use it as this shield from actually having to have an opinion on something. Yeah, because they just say, I'm actually too smart to care about either of these things.
Well, both sides of like the complete anarchy and then the socialist utopians always have this little thing of it'll work out, it'll work itself out. The main difference is like some of the anarchy people can just always kind of point to the past a little bit and say, you know what, stuff did conglomerate, it did come together, it's what happens, the stuff forms, but then that forms into state. So who knows what the answer is? But of course, somebody like Jefferson said the answer to it was you had to have like some revolution every 50 years or something. Then you start sounding like Castro, who says we need to be in constant revolution. And this is the endless yin yang, the push pull that we are all eternally in, that there's no answers for. Let's see here. Malice defines anarchy as you don't speak for me. Yeah. But there's something that frustrates me is the left is constantly in policy and pushing and doing and working in those mid-level institutions. And the right, you can see people like Michael Malice and a lot of those neo-reactionaries that I talk about who start saying like, no, we got to grab the stick because they grab the stick. We got to grab the stick. Like Malice just today, once again, was saying, oh man, you know how the left uses cancel culture? That's great. We got to use that. We got to use that too, but we got to use it with justifiably and that sort of stuff. And you can see like the far end of it. But then there's this level of we are going to use our elected power to roll some things back. And some of those libertarians who supposedly are like, we don't like laws, they will suddenly be mad at the person using a power to roll back a law as if that's overusing the law.
Oh, for sure.
Does that make sense? So that doesn't make sense. That's the contradiction. We're rolling back the law.
They keep trying to do that with like, I'm worried Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and those types will definitely go too far with some stuff. But they keep trying to do that to him. I can't for the life of me get I can't understand this whole debate that they had with Matt Walsh, right? Where like everybody jumped on him and said that he went too far when he was shitting on Dylan Mulvaney. They were like, first off, they were like, he's too mean, and I was like, well, he's always mean. I don't know, like that's just Matt Walsh. But then they were like, he didn't say anything untrue, but it was a little bit too harsh. Like,
yeah,
what was he supposed to say? I don't know. It feels like that's I don't know, because I don't want to watch people go way too far to the right, But I also don't want to have like any movement toward the right. I don't want to be like, well,
that's Kimball says here, anti-anarchist arguments, in my experience, rarely tend towards utilitarianism. I think that's the endless yin yang too that's kind of going on. And I think Malice and those neo-reactionaries are arguing for almost kind of like social unity in wielding the power of the state. And so then you have to roll with the Malice types and those types of guys and Dave Smith, who are actually saying roll back this thing, like roll it back, like roll those laws back, like deregulate the stuff. But then some of those other libertarian types who've claimed libertarianism all this time, and this is one of the big fights that's been going on in that libertarian world, where you get the Mises Caucus and the people against it, is the Mises Caucus says, no, if we get into positions, we actually roll stuff back. Whereas the other side says, no, we can't do anything, which makes no sense because the other people have made so many laws already. It's insufferable. So
that's one of the things, like, for decades.
Renegotiate that text. Yeah.
That's what we do. Because, like, I mean, it's something like just in my own head, and it's an almost impossible conversation to have with nearly anyone. But just, like, what if we decided to undo welfare? How do you even begin to unwind that? Because, like, the whole Thomas Sowell thing, that welfare is the worst thing that ever happened to African Americans. And
how do you roll that?
Yeah, how do you even begin to unwind that? Like, when you've got people that, like, when you're getting into your 5th generation of people born into welfare, you just take that away from those little kids.
Well,
like, Jesus.
Here's the thing. What I imagine would happen is people would just start stealing food, and once they start stealing food, Walmart's gonna withdraw from their cities. But that's already happening. Yeah. There's no Walmart
Chicago,
in Portland.
Baltimore.
There's no Walmart in Chicago. Yeah.
San Francisco. Yeah. No, everywhere that there's woke DAs, Walmart can't do business. I think I was surprised to learn is, like, Walmart on average makes only like 1% to 2% profit on each individual item.
Yeah, but so they can do that. They can afford to do that by selling.
Well, yeah, because they do by volume. But it means that, like, if somebody steals one bag of chips, that means Walmart has to sell 100 to make up for that bag of chips.
Yeah.
And you realize just how much theft hurts them because their margins are so narrow.
Well, I mean, I don't want to think about any of this because I kind of want to just make our army climate friendly.
Oh, electric tanks.
That's something to roll out.
Imagine
that, if ever anybody's really actually talking about stuff that could actually be something we change inside the margins, inside the money, inside of what our taxes are, inside of balancing a budget, you get something like that that's just so far out of left field, and next thing you know, we're arguing like, no, don't turn the tanks electric. Like, what are you doing? Or something.
Yeah,
like
there's so many reasons why that's a terrible, terrible idea.
If you're gonna skimp on anything,
I'm not even a military or energy expert, but I know enough to know that that won't work. Because for one thing, you need to be able to re-energize your tanks in the battlefield. They get very bad mileage. And, like, I mean, how much fucking extension?
What kind of battery?
Need to stretch from Kuwait into Iraq?
How much does a tank weigh? Like,
many tons already. Yeah, and imagine batteries only make it weigh more. But then also it's just like the whole thing where it's like
55 tons is an average tank weight.
If you even want to talk about electric tanks, we have to have a nuclear power infrastructure, and they're against that.
No. You don't need to figure out logistics. You just do it because that's what's good.
Oh, that's right.
It's funny that it's getting one of my favorite things to watch is just the mental breakdown over a course of months of Anna Kasparian. As things get too absurd even for her, where she even Anna Kasparian is now saying, like, look, what are you're telling everybody to get electric cars, and the next month you say, hey guys, please stop charging your electric cars. We're dying.
Yeah. And she was complaining about, like, the cost of it and all that stuff. That was pretty funny. Actual Justice Warrior had a good episode on that this week, and a bunch of people covered that. But she was complaining that she had to pay at her HOA for electric chargers. It was pretty hilarious. I want to go to the Jim Bennett stuff, but at first I passed over. Maybe we skim over. Probably not skimmable. But Tucker fired, and Don Lemon fired, and then weird stuff about Crowder and Dave Landau and Crowder's divorces. Talking about national scene stuff.
There's not a lot to say about Don Lemon. He was declining and he sucked ass anyway. So good riddance. Tucker, there's not much to say because we don't really know anything. Like,
it's fun. Jimmy Dore's theory, because Jimmy Dore is, hardcore leftist, but I think he might actually have a point, whereas he thinks it came down to the fact that Tucker directly called out media for kowtowing to pharmacy, because 70% of media's advertising comes from pharmacy or something like that, and that includes Fox. And that's that was Jimmy Dore's theory. And of everything I've heard, that's the one that makes the most sense to me, is that Rupert was like, no, he's pissing in the face of our money. He's got to go.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you guys follow Dave Landau coming out hard on Crowder, saying that Crowder was full of crap?
Wow, that was interesting.
By the way, Flip, I got the Don't Talk light on. Flip, I have the Don't Talk light on. It's a rant. It's time for my rant, and I have the don't. Just kidding.
We know now that why he's getting divorced is because he had a "Don't Talk" wife button in the kitchen.
Yeah, so if nobody saw, watch Dave Landau on Michael Mouse's show, and then watch Anthony Cumia review it, and then Landau went on Cumia's, because Cumia was the guy from Opie and Anthony that Landau ditched to go over to Crowder. And Crowder, in the middle of complaining about the Daily Wire and all that stuff, he was giving really strict contracts to Landau and doing stuff like putting up a light saying it's a rant time, which basically meant Dave Don't Talk light, which is kind of funny. And then in the middle of that, there's all this stuff of Crowder announcing he got a divorce and Candace Owens hinting that it had to do with unfaithfulness and that he was hitting on.
I didn't see that.
And she's actually suing him, and he said that she defamed him or something like that. And she's also
Candace Owens is suing Crowder?
Yeah, because he said that she defamed him or something like that. And she says that he was hitting on her. And she has the proof.
Yeah. Oh my god! Candace Owens. Most of the time I just want her to shut up.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
I don't catch her that much anymore unless she's kind of in the middle of one of these.
Yeah, the only time I hear about Candace Owens is when somebody else talks about Candace Owens.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch the struggle session of Jim Bennett?
I watched part of it.
I did. I watched the whole thing over a couple of days.
I watched a couple of them too. It's pretty funny. So, Jim Bennett.
Just confused as who is Jim Bennett? Why is Jim Bennett? How did he get on the radar?
He had a refutation of the CES letter a while back.
Well, let's go back beyond that. You remember
he
Bob?
Refuted CES.
You remember Bob Bennett? Bob Bennett, our senator.
Senator Bob Bennett.
This is his son. And I was there in the building when Bob Bennett got primaried, and I saw Bob Bennett right after getting primaried come walking out of the room crying with his wife. They were just walking down the hall alone, and I was there, just me and them coming down the hall in the Salt Palace, and I saw him there crying right after he got primaried. Wow. Yeah, that was a crazy moment. But Jim Bennett's his son. He ran for mayor in Provo a couple times on some sort of third party. And then he got a little prominent after that because he wrote an answer to the CES letter. He also recently wrote a review of Under the Banner of Heaven. I think it's mostly on his Facebook page, but I actually really liked his review of Under the Banner of Heaven. I thought it was pretty funny because he was ripping on how goofy the portrayal of Utah was. But anyway, so through that, he ended up going on Mormon Stories several different times. And of course, when he goes on Mormon Stories, he kind of cucks a little bit the same way that Patrick Mason cucks. And he went on RFM and Bill Real and kind of cucked the same whenever he goes on there. And then he goes on Midnight Mormons and talks tough. So he kind of plays like both sides of the stuff. Anyway, on Twitter, he gets rowdy and other people get rowdy with him, and then he gets riled up by Desnat people and all that sorts of stuff, and they all end up having fights. And then he calls some people Desnat who aren't Desnat, and then he says stuff like something that pissed Kevin off, because I know Kevin was on there. He said something about like he just keeps saying Mormons are 10 times worse all over Twitter than the ex-Mormons are, and just keeps
saying, fuck off.
Yeah.
Twitter is where Mormons thrive. Twitter Mormon world is fucking hilarious.
But then you go to Reddit. And, oh my!
Reddit has no Mormons.
Who is Patrick Mason, and why does he matter?
He's Patrick an apologist.
So Patrick Mason
he's simultaneously a woke apologist and a Mormon apologist.
Oh.
Yeah, so Patrick Mason is one of the top scholars of the church right now, and he actually gets called on a lot if somebody's supposed to be an official scholarly spokesperson for the church. And they got mad at him just recently because this last week he decided to start doing a weekly news podcast with John DeLynn. And if you watch those podcasts, the news podcast, maybe I'll pull it up, but it's basically, I mean, I call it like,
it's mostly Patrick Mason apologizing for being Mormon. But he looks like Eric Butts. Do you remember Eric Butts, the guy who cried over the Star Wars trailer?
Yeah. We pulled that all up in an old episode.
That guy has a name.
Patrick Mason looks exactly like it. No, I found out his name just so I could make that reference anytime Patrick Mason comes up.
I think he looks a lot like
Star Wars guy.
He looks a lot like Michael White, the writer of White Lotus, if you know who that guy is, who was in a bunch of Utah films with the guys from Napoleon Dynamite and all them. He was in Gentleman Bronco.
Man, I need to rewatch that movie. I really liked that. I only watched it one time.
So here's the CS letters stuff with DeLynn, and these were back when DeLynn's stuff was long. So he did like 20 hours with DeLynn on CS.
Yeah, I remember like that was the DeLynn I liked, was like, because I remember I listened to like all 8 hours of the Richard Dutcher interview, and that was like 100 times more interesting than I expected it to be.
Really?
Yeah.
You know? But a lot of that, part of what made that so interesting to me was the way Richard Dutcher just shit on the BYU film department. This whole thing is like, when he said like, I made a movie because I was about to approach graduation and realized they didn't teach me anything about how to make a movie. So he's like, I need to make a movie so I can be a filmmaker because BYU won't teach it to me. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that's right. Jim Bennett was on with right after the musket fire thing. He was on Midnight Mormon with Jonathan at the same time.
Oh,
and they were both commenting on what they thought about the whole entire thing. But yeah, Bennett was on. He was on twice this week because they were coming after him for all the contention. That's what I put my stupid meme at the beginning of this, which is a bad meme because it was like overly messy, but it was a Jerry Springer fight. And it was a Jerry Springer fight with all the people in the Mormon and ex-Mormon world. And of course, down in the corner, I have a picture of Russell and Nelson, who just barely told us to get all out of this contention game. And as soon as people say that, it's when it doubles down. Everybody doubled down on the contention, man. So
yeah, I gotta say that feels like a tone deaf message for, not tone deaf, but like avoiding contention is not the message that Mormons need to hear. They already do that way too fucking much. It's their biggest problem.
But then you can like picture the Spider-Man meme with all the Spider-Mans pointing at each other. And then you can just say, Russell and Nelson had to talk about this. And all the Spider-Mans pointing at each other like, no more contention. No, you no more contention. No, you no more contention. And now they can all just use it together. But that's kind of one of my complaints about
all of you assholes, stop fighting.
Charles Biden says, ironically, Jim Bennett's response, and that's basically what Bennett's doing, because I'm going to show some of our insider stuff that happened with Bennett. But ironically, Bennett's response to the CS letter is what sent me to my faith crosses. That same thing like happened to me with the old Daniel C. Peterson and the old apologists caused my faith crisis way more than no,
that's me too.
Mormon
I didn't even read the CES letter. Like I started reading it, and then like my friend had also told me that Fair Mormon had a refutation of it, so I went to the refutation. I was like, oh, I should be fair and read both sides, and they had it laid out beautifully, all the different issues and their responses to it, and the responses were so fucking dumb that's what
Back 20 years ago too. And this is one of the reasons I appreciate Midnight Mormons and Jacob, even though they can be salty too, but they'll be salty in front of people. Like Daniel C. Peterson and all those guys would be dickheads and ad hominem attackers and all that stuff, but they would never, ever, ever in a million years pretend to interact with or even, know any sort of person other than maybe like publish some sort of dirt on them or something like that. Like these guys are way more of good faith like nowadays than they used to be. But let's see here. Let me show you this one. Kevin showed him this here. Jim Bennett saying I'll show him your mother's balls instead of putting it on. And what happened there, and I have the post of it somewhere. I'll see if I can pull it up. But I started commenting on the Mormon Tabernacle Choir on a conference day. And I said that the choir wasn't as good as it used to be. And I have some insider info on why it's not as good as it used to be. If you want to, maybe I'll tell tales out of school because some of this is a hunch. But one of the reasons the choir is not as good as it used to be is because I think they go by the Spirit now, which filters out the gays. That's why they're not singing as good anymore.
And one thing that I thought was funny was that I didn't know that I learned on Midnight Mormons is apparently on BYU they call the theater department the gay building.
So
that's the old name for it.
My choir, my voice teacher growing up was a member of that, and later in life, when he was done with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, he left his wife for his lover, who was also another longtime Mormon Tabernacle Choir person, and there was a lot of that going on from what I heard and know from some other people. And my older brother is currently helping run a 501c3 choir in Provo with a bunch of men's chorus people who are all, and other people who are all for sure good enough to be in that choir, if not overly good. Like these are highly trained musicians and singers and all that sorts of stuff. But they're all gay and polyamorous and all that stuff, and they can't pass temper recommend tests and all that sorts of stuff. So they've created a choir, and their choir is good enough that they're making money and going around and doing stuff and filing for 501c3 and all that sort of stuff.
No gays in your choir is death like no Jews in your comedy.
Well, okay, yeah.
It's just, why would you do that to yourself?
So that was kind of a beef I had with the Midnight Mormons Jim Bennett thing when they were, or not Jim Bennett. It was one of the recent ones when it was the BYU Hawaii guy when they were responding to him. And it was one of my moments where I just want to shout, what they mean, right? And it's because they were talking about they were saying that like they keep claiming that no gays are allowed at BYU, but they have a whole theater department, and that's known as the gay building or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you know what they mean, right? You know it. You have to. You have to know that what their beef is not that gay people are not allowed to be on campus. It's that they have a different rule set, and that kind of sucks. It kind of sucks to go there and be like, I'm a dude, I want to date dudes, and they're like, well, no, you can't. And I get it. If you don't like the rules, don't go there. I'm totally on board with that. But at the same time, like, quit pretending like it's the same thing.
Well, my older brother also had to contact me once for like HR advice because like all the polyamorous people are hitting on each other and it's causing HR problems. But anyway,
of course they are. Why would it end any other way? I would polyamory work any other way. The people like,
it doesn't end in group love. It ends in lawsuits. That's what always happens, folks.
Anyway, this is my whole thing with a lot of Mormon apologists, including the Midnight Mormons, and the way they talk about the gay issue is that they act like, oh, you can totally be Mormon and gay. I was like, yeah, but that's not what they mean. Like they don't mean I'm getting excommunicated just because I'm attracted to men. They mean I can never be in a relationship and still be Mormon. Like I can never be with a dude because I want to do that.
Yeah.
And like just face it head on. Face what it actually is head on.
Well, this is what the thing is, because like I know, and I also knew this because I knew of a person who was trying out for that choir who had no business trying out for it, and they got way deeper than they used to get. But they started saying, and they would openly say it, that they were filtering more for spirituality and passing spiritual tests because they think if they had enough spirit, the choir would be better. But that choir used to be intense. It used to be intense. Like BYU's chorus and all the performers and all those people were high level, highly trained, highly studied, highly selected singers. And
do you have a time frame of when it got worse? You think
like last 10 years? You know,
because I remember in the 90s.
Because I still listen.
I don't remember where it was, but somebody.
I'm not saying they're bad. You still got to be good. You still
I'm saying the ones I listened to were all from like 15 years ago or something like that.
But I'm telling you, like in the 90s when they were like world famous, that was the type of choir where you could have given them an intense piece, and they would have sight read it for you. Like without knowing the song, like the whole choir could have sight read it for you. They were.
It was. I remember, like on my mission or something. I think somebody read the requirements, and it's music school graduate level, like at least. But I remember that being exactly like part of.
They got to be as good as. They got to be as good as your toddler.
That kid is getting nuts, man. He can do.
Jared's got a toddler with perfect pitch.
Yeah, he's got perfect pitch. We found that out the other week. He knows all of the letters of the alphabet. He knows how to spell shit. He knows the Russian alphabet, the Japanese alphabet. And Morgan has him in piano lessons right now. And he went to his second lesson the other day, and he knows like 5 different scales. And I'll ask him,
I saw a video of it.
How many sharps and flats?
Yeah,
no, we'll turn him around, and we'll play a note and be like, "What's that?" And he'll be like, "It's an A flat."
Yep, it's insane.
Can we eat some snacks now, asshole?
Anyway, they used to be intense, and now I still think they want to choose the best that they can, but they've said that what matters first is that spirit and passing the spiritual temple recommendees type stuff, right?
Wow.
Anyway, if you talk to those really intense choir people like my older brothers, I know enough about it, but they know a whole lot about it. And I was just kind of regurgitating some opinions I had heard here. Right. So, and some people were complaining about it, and I still think it's fine. I'm not that up on it, but I said, I think there's actually less talent than there used to be too. I've heard auditioning is far less stringent than it was when it grabbed world fame. And Jim Bennett comes out of nowhere because he's in that choir.
Yeah, but what you got to understand is back then Jim Bennett wasn't in the choir, so how could it have been more stringent back then? They had 0 Jim Bennetts.
He says everything about this statement is ridiculous. The 3-phase audition process takes 6 months and is far more arduous than it has ever been. And when was it that the choir, which has been the most recognized choir in the world, the most of its 93 years, really grabbed world fame? And then somebody else came in and just started arguing with him about it and all that sorts of stuff. Anyway, as it went along, he shows, this was on Conference Sunday. He takes a picture. He's doing this argument from the freaking choir. Right? He's
talking about how amazing the choir is while he's fucking around on Facebook during choir practice.
Yeah. Anyway, it gets to the point. At some point, he's repeating what the other guy says, but he says fuck with and all that sorts of stuff. And he goes, "I'll show him your mother's balls." Instead, he starts saying like all this sorts of stuff, right? And this is from the choir at conference, right? And that's fine. And I even say to him, because like we get through it and we argue through it, because I say, Jib, that wasn't hyperbolic. Did I sound hyperbolic or crazy or anything like that? And by the end of it, I say, hey, if you're saying that's what it is, it's what it is. I don't know one way or the other, but like I started calling like, you're being like Trumpy and boasty because you're the one who always complains about Trump or people being inappropriate on the internet and all that stuff. And but that's fine. So then at any point there, at some point I told him, where'd it go? I told him I just remember it. There it is. I dig it. I'll remember, because all the pious types who think others aren't nice enough in comments in the world get all Trumpy and internet-y. I dig it. I'll remember it. I know some people who went through the process. Oh, I'm just saying that. But anyway, like I said at some point to him, like, hey man, I'll bury this. I'll bury the hatchet on all this stuff, whatever. But don't go getting on the internet and acting all like you don't get internet-y. You know what I mean?
I fucking love it. Yeah. I love Jim Bennett because at this point, the interactions that I've had with him and seen you guys have with him, I just don't take him all that seriously, and he makes me laugh.
But that's the point. It's like, I think
he just immediately goes, your mother's balls.
I said somewhere in there that I appreciate Carden.
He's not even good at being
Jacob.
snarky.
I appreciate anybody who kind of stands up for themselves and that sort of stuff. Like, I'm not upset at that at all. What irritates me is what I always call the Pharisaic thing of the guys you see on the mission, the guy who always slept in, and then he was the first one to start screaming at everybody else if he saw somebody late for something, or the guy who, like, he's just that exact type. And that exact type to me is like what made all parts of Mormonism irritating, because there's always that guy. And it's the guy who is just as bad, if not worse, at it as everybody else, but they're the ones who come in and announce, hey, you guys are being contentious. Hey, you guys are being mean. Hey, you guys are being inappropriate on the internet. And maybe you could be that if you give some caveat and say, hey, I know I've been in the bad in the past, but we really should clean it up. But when you're that type, to me, that's so quintessential the Mormon thing that I hated in the 80s and 90s. Like, that's the thing I hated. And if you ask me, it's my thing that I said that Carden doesn't necessarily like, but I still think it's true. I think most of those types saw that the getting was good over on the woke side to go be the finger wagger at what you're hypocritical about. And so many of them transitioned over to the other side. Although nowadays they can be both at the same time, both Mormon and a woke finger wagger at the same time. And those are, whatever that world is the stuff that drives me hot shit and shade, because like he can be like that. I think it's funny if he's like that until he turns around and says, how dare these fascists on the internet act this way.
Yeah, don't make fun of, don't bitch about Trump's mean tweets and then immediately go to your mother's balls.
Exactly.
The second somebody questions
mean tweets,
the Mormon Tabernacle
it's
Choir.
The same thing as like Biden's new thing of coming out and saying, hey, we brought back being the adults in the room and being the proper and bringing respectful. And you're like, what are you talking about? No, you have not in any way, shape, or form ever once been less of a narcissistic, complete douchebag than Trump ever was. Trump's just better at it than you. Let's see. Oh, wait a second here.
Watching that interview with Jim on the Midnight Mormons, like, he seems like a really neat guy. He seems like the kind of guy, if you drank beer, you'd want to drink beer with him. You know,
he's the kind of guy, if he stayed that guy and didn't get pious, I would like him. But as soon as he gets pious and acts about, because that's one, you know, Carden and Jacob and all those guys, like they kind of own it when they get internet-y or whatever. And that's what I like about them, you know. Oh, wait, here's a comment. Somebody's got a comment.
I have a comment for the Marines. I think you should see if you are entitled to any educational benefits, because if your career goal is being a rapper, you're going to spend a lot of time in the unemployment line.
I guess that's a pretty good comment.
Owens on Jerry Springer, hilarious. I would watch a compilation of those dog shit insults. Oh, that's amazing.
So anyway, Jim Bennett called this Guatemax girl.
Which I have never heard of Guatemax before.
Not yet, me neither.
He's a Twitter
person. The meme that Guatemax made after that was wonderful.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been meaning to look that up, but I don't
know if it's separate. And she might have deleted it after getting shamed by them or something like that. Who knows? But let's see here. I guess I gotta go to the live stuff. The Trial of Guatemax.
Yeah, I need to watch that. I don't have Twitter, so I can't find Guatemax memes.
I saw her floating around. But on the previous episode, he said that like everything she's attached to is sludge and that sort of stuff. And that I guess she did run around with some people who would use the hashtag Desnat stuff. But here.
Like Desnat is a weird one to me because like Desnat seems to have a little bit of that 4chan thing where it's so hard to tell when they're being serious or when they're just winding people up.
It's we
talk about Destiny?
The meta ironic. They're meta ironic stuff.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one of the points they bring up. One of the guys here, like who pulled out guns and all that sort of stuff. But one of the deals is like Jim Bennett and all these guys want to call it like white supremacist fascism and stuff. But they always point out that it's like a Polynesian person who's behind it. And Guatemax is Guatemalan here. You're like, what? So what's going on? And this is actually really true of a bunch of that stuff that's been called Russian bots and alt-right stuff through the world. It's people who do not fit the mold of what you think they fit or what the media wants to paint them to be. But
okay, so hold on a second, Jim.
Hold on a second. I want to see what the part where he says calls her fascist. Fascist.
Blown. The second I got the text, I thought, what the heck?
Well-produced fascism is really a good sign of your talent.
Okay.
Well-produced fascism is a good sign of your talent. But I mean, you got to remember
fascism. He's getting fascism from that.
Well, because they call all Desnat fascism.
Yeah, that's just the thing to do.
One of which is wearing a tie and white shirt. As
where does it come up?
What love is, so the word doesn't get stolen.
No, I wouldn't concede any of that.
His whole thing about love, like if you watched on the previous episode, he says love's only love, and there's no different types of loves. You can't go.
Such a dopey thing to say.
I can't even read those. But
what? Oh, should we read them? They're on the screen for a second.
Would you see that maybe Luke is right? That we have to start defining what love is, so the word doesn't get stolen.
No, I wouldn't concede any of that.
People are sick and tired of being told how they must feel on issues. Stop telling us what our opinions have to be on these. Love my LGBTQ neighbors and also know that the lifestyle is unhealthy and in opposition to God's teachings. I really...
That's called tolerance.
No, you can't. Love isn't feelings. It isn't?
It's actions. If you're condemning, excluding your LGBTQ neighbors, you're not loving them.
See, here's all I want from my neighbors is inaction. Actually, that's all I want from you. That's all tolerance is. Is I like
leave us alone.
I like sitting on my porch and playing guitar and sipping whiskey.
And you leave them alone, and they leave you alone, and you leave us all alone.
All of them, all of my neighbors are Mormon, and all of them would tell me, "Well, that's sinful behavior," and I'd say, "Okay." And be like, but I'm not going to stop you from doing that. I'm like, okay, perfect. Go on thinking it's sinful behavior. We're losing our ability to say, yeah, fuck off. Yeah. That's all I want them to do. That's what I want the trans people to do. Whenever they tell me like I'm a woman, I'll be like, no, you're not. And I want them to be like, well, fuck that guy. I'm a woman. And I'll be like, hey, fuck that guy. I don't think he's a woman. And then we carry on. Yeah. That's it. That's all I want.
It's just like I don't believe the supernatural claims of Mormons. That doesn't mean I can't love them. Like, what? Really? That's where Jim is? Like, if you don't believe that some men menstruate, that you can't love them? What
no, that's all love can be. That's all love can be right now. That's because they take Jesus and they're like, oh, Jesus said, love thy neighbor. And clearly what he meant by that was indulge in everything that your neighbor says and make him never feel even the tiniest bit uncomfortable.
Jesus also said, go and sin no more, that hateful fuck.
No. He told her, go forth and keep sinning.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
You have my blessing.
Oh, no, you were just cheating on your husband? He probably did something shitty to deserve it. Keep doing it. Reddit, Jesus.
What would it say? Thank you, your bigotry is... Oh, man, it goes too fast. Man, that goes fast.
This video is really impressive, though, especially since she put it together so fast.
Yeah, in like one day or something.
That we have to start defining what love is.
Oh, come on, I gotta stop on the screen. I'm gonna miss it.
I wouldn't concede any
of it. Man, I wish I could make videos like that. Thank you. Your bigotry is even more so. Wait, see, how is she condemning and excluding anyone? Christ abhorred the... Can't see it. Embrace the sinner. Her stance mirrors that of our Savior. The Lord's church is clear on its position on marriage and premarital sexual relations. Your pretzel logic and misogyny is impressive. Thank you. Your bigotry is even more so. Contention, Jim Bennett. Oh, there's the contention. You got the Spider-Man pointing at one, and then Jim saying you guys are all being contentious too, type stuff.
Just a person
anyway
to interact with you, hopefully positively. And there's a chance for that.
I'm willing to admit that I shouldn't have jumped all over. I didn't know that Guatemax was a woman. I didn't even think
he doesn't back off on being mad that she interacts with Desnat though. He only backs off that it turns out that she's woman a little bit. You know, he starts getting real uncomfortable and gets off the stream because
it's like, what do I do? Am I supposed to shit on a woman? I can't. Yeah. That's against the rules.
About Black people or Mexicans or what have you, and then there's I made that account because this is what.
But it's kind of funny because like when he goes on RFM and Bill Real and they start giving him the 1 degree, him and Patrick Mason, they're like, I don't know. It almost seems like they're happy sitting in that mode of whipping the back of saying, yes, we are terrible. Yes. Oh gosh, we are horrible. Yes, we are horrible. Yes, I don't have an answer for that. We're just terrible.
I think, and I want more people to interpret the scriptures this way. That is what I think Desnat does. And because of that,
she's was making what she viewed as a funny meme.
It's somewhere here.
Was calling Jim an anti-Mo. To me, that just like, it's not even funny. I don't mind calling him Progmo Jim as a trope because people call me Boomer Cardin. And we all have to deal with polygamous jokes when we get introduced to new friends who don't really know anything about Mormons. And it's a groaner and we all deal with it. I think had that been as far as the claim went, Jim probably would have been just fine because he's a big boy and a tough guy. And I love him as a brother. But call him an anti-Mormon, I think that was a little bit of a flop. And we have to be really careful with the muskets analogy. Like, unless you're really going for like the overture of 1812 with muskets or something super funny like that, we got to be careful with that because whether we like it or not, that word has kind of been.
She put a gun in her meme, but it was like one of those meme things that. Did you see the gun part? Because I wasn't looking at the screen whenever it came out.
I want to make a meme of that scene from The Simpsons. That classic episode from when the Republicans are running. It's the one about the thing. And just the whole thing where like he uses a violent metaphor and Mo's like, you heard the man. He starts handing out grenades and Buddy's like, I think he was speaking figuratively. And he's like, oh, you really think so? Okay, give him back.
Give him back.
And I don't know how to do that stuff, but I just want to take those things and then cut it in with Nelson's talk and then put Jim Bennett in there and all that.
Was that muskets right there in that picture? Is that what that is about? I think there's muskets in one of these pictures or something, though. That's muskets there, right? So that's the fascism.
Oh.
To infinity and beyond, nah, for time and all eternity.
Chance in the sky to eat, drink, and get married and die.
Yes.
Okay, so they're calling him a big fat Progmo, which we kind of discussed 2 days ago.
They're calling for me to be blood atoned.
No.
Well, let's just go to Guadamax on it.
Yeah, that wasn't how I interpreted that line.
Is that what they said? Let's interpret it.
You look stoked out of your mind. By the way, can I say before you continue, you look intense in this avatar on Twitter. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. Is that AI generated? Did you have a
part of the deal? Is like after a while they kind of realize that there is like a generational difference, and he's not understanding memes and the meme culture that's going on.
Yeah, there's a generational difference, but that final scene where there actually is a musket, kind of that's a little much.
Where is it? That's what I'm trying to find.
It's the very last part of her meme.
Generated.
The music
like
meme?
the scariest guy in a bar
where they're sitting on the hill with the muskets.
No, it's
a biker club I would never want to get involved with in my life.
Okay, where is it? I wasn't ever looking at the screen. I'm never looking at the screen and stuff.
Oh, is that? They didn't get to the end of it. I'll see if I can find.
I don't know if Donald Sutherland's the scariest guy on earth.
Did they not show it on the stream?
I'm not sure if they did.
I think Forrest was saying it's deleted.
Oh, maybe replay.
People
are the same.
We're gonna get.
So it never was there on this, because this is the only place I've seen the meme.
Jonathan sent it in the chat.
Oh, back earlier.
Yeah.
Boo 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 boo. Oh gosh, wait a minute. We gotta.
I don't know if I'm gonna find it.
Let's see here. Oh wait. Did you find it?
No, I can't find the full thing. You might be right. It might be gone. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to find it. Let's just move on.
We got a comment here.
is for Pillsbury Dope Boy in the Red. Maybe you need to give her a try. She can help you slim out a little bit.
Yeah.
Damn.
Let's see here. He missed Guadamax's follow-up. The irony of this whole thing is Jim was the guy arguing for love without exceptions. Oh, yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, because you're supposed to...
Nope, found it.
You found the whole entire... Oh, the picture.
Nope, just the whole meme. It's a does not thing. I sent it to the group.
Oh, okay. Pulling up. Coming up. Wherever the stuff went. Oh, it's a video. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for share screen. Charlie, come on. Okay.
The world that he sent his love your neighbor as thyself, right?
Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Right.
So love is at the centerpiece of the gospel. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son, right? I think Lucas brings up a really good point that they're stealing words.
Welcome to Great Faith Inclusive Kingdom.
Truly, there is no God here. Would you see that maybe Luke is right? That we have to start defining what love is so the word doesn't get stolen?
No, I wouldn't consider
Yeah, I want to be able to edit like
Guadamax says, if there's going to be a music video for Javelins, then it has to be heavy power metal. Yes, if you give us the music to...
Guadamax, that guy's a Desnat loon.
Well, it's actually a girl.
Well, whoever she is, I've seen her all over Twitter, and I'm not a fan.
Oh,
yeah, there's muskets.
Well, watch out. You might just be some meme tomorrow.
Desnat, you test, you guessed it. Run around and calling us some racist, sexist. Now you gonna mess with the nest, so you better be ready for the sting for when the Deseret presses. I'm so sick of progressives. Babylon worships sex obsessives. Blind to the eye of the wisdom, alive in the 15 elders of the church of the blessing.
They're actually pretty impressive.
Purpose to life, atone for what blood, and put
This thing is really impressive.
Yeah, they got great flow.
We're dealing with different apologists these days.
Yeah, this is a new world. You gotta, the end part to me feels a little bit much, is what I would say.
You believe it's all chance in the sky to eat, drink, and get married and die. Inversion, y'all been tricked by the serpent in the garden with the kick into the bricks. Meanwhile, brick by brick, we be building up the body of the Lord in the mix. Repent, rebound, you made a wrong turn, you need to turn around. Yo, another foe, ammo with the fetish that you're chained to. I serve God, you chose mammon and the famine of the rod. BYDNW, I hit you with the truth and now it's funny that it troubles you. BYDNW, if you would ever follow through then you would know it too. Listen, we believe that you can repent and you can come back into the fold and try it again. This time you can build from within and dig deep the root to keep calm in the wind. I have hope that grows from my faith, but I worry that I might just be too late. I worry that you might just be too fake, that you won't repent before the heavens shake. Yo, another foe, ammo with the fetish that you're chained to. Come back to the fold or get lost before you get into territory that's too hard. Before you get into trouble with God's law, the settlement level is heavy, the devils and dogs.
I love you, Jimmy. Oh, that gun?
Yeah.
You thought that was too far?
I don't know.
No, that's just a finger in the eye. That's just reinforcing the whole thing. It's just like, relax, buddy.
It's being cocky.
It's a metaphor.
But it's as close as too far as I've seen the musket fire thing come.
Like, yeah, no, I think she hit the nail on the head. But like, who wrote that rap and performed
I don't know. I kind of want to.
I'm really curious. Like, I mean, I'm not a fan, but like the fact that they cranked that shit out apparently in 24 hours. That's really something.
I like that the Mormons are up in their games and all this stuff. I do.
Yeah.
I like that they're talking and out there and mixing it up. And I think the ex-Mormons should keep it up and crack along with it, not freak out and cry fascism and pull Dan McClellan's and block and run away and stuff. Make a better video. That's pretty funny stuff though. Oh my gosh.
That's brilliant. That's really impressive.
They had another video going over the Patrick Mason stuff. And if I put it anyway, I don't get why Patrick Mason would be doing it, because he basically just goes on there, reads like one or two headlines from the church, It's so funny because I mean, I can almost like make a meme or a cartoon out of that and just have him go, well, it says here the church says it's growing. It's grown quite a bit this year. What do you think about that? And then John DeLynn comes in and goes, well, I heard that you guys are lying about all those numbers and you guys are just a bunch of assholes. And then he goes,
oh, probably. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
true.
No,
This is true.
you're probably right.
Yeah.
We're
That's a good
terrible.
point. That's a good point.
Jeffrey Harlan incited violence against LGBTQIA plus 2P people.
Next headline.
ATST. Oh my God, it's me.
I guess I just referenced what we're. If you go back to our video on Patrick Mason before, we were laughing at him for being rich from Red Letter Media. The ending really depressed Patrick. Oh, Patrick Mason. This makes me feel old. I have no idea what's going on. You're old, but you're not as old as Jim Bennett when it was trying to be explained to him, because then he just like stonewalled it and freaked out and shut down and like, no, this is fascism. And like John DeLynn, he gets a meme made about him and he wants to call the police or something like that. It's like, just be like, get in the game, y'all.
Oh yeah. Kevin's talking about Patrick Mason's meme.
Oh yeah, Patrick Mason has
that Mormons own a lot of guns and commit I don't know why he's bummed about that, because Mormons also commit like zero gun violence. Unless you want to be like John DeLynn and point to like he's gonna point to the Colorado guy who poisoned his wife and be like, "Is this a symptom of Mormonism?" Probably is, right? I'm not saying that it is, but a lot of people are saying that it is.
Who was it that commented on that graph about gun ownership in America?
That's Patrick Mason. I'm gonna pull
that
it
was
up right
Patrick
now.
Mason. Oh, okay, yeah. Because that's one of those things that's so stupid. Where it's like, do you think it has anything to do with a lot of these people being farmers?
Yeah.
Like, and hunters and rural people? Like, are you that stupid?
Well, and if it bums you out, then compare it to the level of gun crime committed by Mormons, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Well, that's things like, well, in their stupid, simplistic worldview, having a gun makes you a bad person that's going to use it. You know,
So
like it's one of those things where it's like one of the left is like the most law-abiding demographic in America are concealed carry permit holders. Like if you have a CCP, you're less likely to commit crime than any other person.
So Mormons are second on that graph. It's kind of like small there, but from an LDS perspective, this is really depressing. Might I recommend as a first step remedy a recent general conference talk from a certain president and prophet of the church. What does that president prophet say about guns? He didn't say anything about guns. Kevin was just talking to me because I'm crappy at guns because I'm blind, but he's gonna take me and go shooting or whatever and all that sort of stuff.
I need to be better with guns. I'm an Idahoan. I own an AR-15 and that's it. I don't know shit about it because my dad is very. No, so I sent the picture that Kevin wanted me to show you my response to the tweet. I sent the picture to the group, and that was I was speculating as to why I thought Patrick Mason was depressed about it, and I figured it was the same reason I was depressed about it.
You just sent it now?
Yeah, I just sent it.
That's the thing. It's got a typo in it though.
Yeah, I just had to.
Oh damn it! Does it?
Yeah, you misspelled "by." It's auto grabber, whatever it is.
How embarrassing!
I don't know. That's one of those things. A long time ago, I stopped being afraid of just guns. I realized a long time ago it has everything to do with where you are.
No, so
my family should be worried about guns.
My family they're not like gun people. They're like, yeah, Second Amendment's great, but they're not really gun people, except for my younger brother. He fucking loves guns. He's also the only sibling I have that I would trust to hold my gun because I showed my gun to my siblings. And like I didn't have the magazine in it or anything. I handed it to them, pointing at the ground, and they start like waving it everywhere. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop! Point it at the ground, you idiot! And they're like,
yeah,
it's not loaded. I was like, of course it's not loaded. Point it at the ground. And then my brother, who's constantly playing with guns, he's very careful with it, cleans it out. He understands that it can't ever be pointed at anyone for any reason.
Yeah.
Very gun safe.
You only point guns at things you intend to destroy. That's one of the gun nut rules. It's funny. They're so nutty. They have these rules. Like they talk about trigger discipline. You know,
I'm
that's a big one.
I know I'm a bad shooter because I know I'm left-eyed and I'm right-handed. That makes it tough. But
that's unfortunate.
I've been around gun guys my whole entire life, and I mean, who hasn't around here? You know,
Yeah.
But I've never gotten freaked out by a single one of them, and I don't know. I don't understand the people. I mean, it can only be from a point of ignorance that you sit there panicking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Patrick Mason plays the role. He plays the role of the guy who's supposed to also be within the church, helping to Dan McClellanize the church from the inside, while Dan McClellan does it from the outside. Well, at least that's our claim about the Dan McClellan.
Well, the AR thing is like, there's so many layers of stupid with the AR thing, but not least of which is like more people are beaten to death with bare fists every year than killed by a long gun.
Well, and more people are killed by handguns than long guns. Like, you can do this all day.
Well, it's a statistic I learned a couple of years ago during the Summer of Love, and it still blows my mind. But in 4 years, like 2016 to 2020, more black men were shot by black men in Chicago than all of the black men who were lynched in the 70-something years of Jim Crow and lynching in America.
Jesus.
Like, yeah, exactly. You know, because like, and you think the way people talk about these things, and they've got the scale and proportion totally out of whack. You know, it's just nuts.
Let's see. Did we hit on the things? Let me just, because I might want to talk about Mary Harrington for a second.
Yeah, I never watched that, but
I didn't either. Show it to us.
I will, but
play the
I
whole
just want to
thing
make
live
sure,
on the air.
because we'll end up on that topic. I just want to make sure that we hit all. We talked Amazing Atheist. Anybody watch any of the Ray Epps stuff where they're running like the apologetics for Ray Epps right now?
A little bit. That's kind of crazy to me how nice the left has been to Ray Epps.
Exactly. That's kind of the point. Look up Glenn Beck. I mean, Glenn Greenwald talking about it, and Dave Smith did a whole episode on it too. Where
that was one of the.
They're rolling out the red carpet for this guy and giving him like, they just spent like 2 years freaking out on anybody who was supposedly any part of that whole thing. And the one guy who was screaming, "Let's go in the place." They're running all these stories of saying this poor guy's had such a tough life that people.
I don't think they understand how much more that makes him look like a Fed.
It 100% does,
because that was one of the funniest things ever when he's like, "Hey guys, let's go fucking infiltrate the Capitol building," and they immediately start screaming "Fed" in his face.
That just reminds me of another.
He's like it's like the CIA agents watching him just like facepalm, like, "Oh my god, dude,
it's
way
like
too on the nose."
There's the classic Simpsons from the glorious era when Homer has a tax debt, so they make him into an informer, and he just goes into the bar with the wire going, "So, does anybody feel like committing any crime today?"
No, and now he's making the rounds. Like, he had a 20-minute or 60 seconds interview the other day, and oh my god, it's kid gloves with this guy. They're just like, "Yeah, life sucks after this." You're like, "Yeah, I probably got a little too carried away or whatever." I'm like, no. You guys didn't do this with the QAnon shaman. You guys didn't do this with Ashley Babbitt or any of these other people who got like fucked over in this fucking riot, which I freaked out on the one liberal guy at work the other day. I felt kind of bad because he was talking about, "I can't support anyone who incites this violence." I was like, okay, fucker, there's a lot of reasons to not support Trump. That's not one of them. Yeah. He didn't incite the fucking violence.
And
like, well, it was his big deal was like it's a wink and a nod. I was like, how could he have given that speech? What words could he say in that speech that would not lead you to believe that he was inciting violence? And I agree, Ashley Babbitt. She broke into a building.
That Ashley Babbitt thing, though, I mean, that one does stick to me. Is that because like they've never really explained that one? Like, and that thing's like, you know. I have been for years, like, I lean toward the cops because the cops have a hard job and they're constantly put in situations where they're forced to make decisions in a split second. But the Ashley Babbitt shooting does not make any sense to me with what we know, with the video we have and what they've told us. It does not make any damn sense to me. I don't see how that was a good shoot. And I'd be willing to change my mind. I'd be willing to change my mind, but the fact that they aren't making the case makes me think it was a bad shoot and they're covering it up.
So this episode by Dave Smith's really good, kind of going over like how curious it is how they're treating him. It's a really good episode on it. And Glenn Greenwald did a good bit on it too here. The Strange Case of Ray Epps. Watch both of those and just be like, what is going on
I gotta
here?
check that out because I barely know about it other than just the peripheral stuff.
Yeah,
but every time Glenn Greenwald has mentioned it, that just it strikes me how just a few years ago he was a hero of the left.
I know.
Oh yeah.
And now,
but that's because a few years ago the left was just as skeptical about CIA.
But he's like Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil and has sex with the man, and he's like the ultra right wing national.
It makes me love Glenn Greenwald because like the suckiest people always hate him.
Real balls.
Exactly. That's a good sign. Is that he's been totally consistent all the way through.
Yeah, the biggest pieces of shit in politics always hate you. That means that I love you.
That's true. Because it's one of those things. I'd almost forgot about it, but Tucker Carlson was opposed to the Iraq War from the very beginning.
Oh, was he?
And stayed that way, and he never budged. He never budged.
Are we going to find out that Tucker Carlson is actually a good guy?
That's part of the problem. Like a lot of people
insane
they all thought that he seemed very different than everybody else on Fox News.
He's definitely very different. He's the only thing I ever watched on Fox News. Because you guys will mention Hannity and Jesse Waters and shit like that, and I'm like,
I haven't watched Hannity in years.
I don't remember the last time I've seen any of those guys.
But people going on Tucker.
I'll say it again. Like for me, Hannity is a pure Republican hack. Hannity is what people pretend Tucker is. Because Tucker shits on Republicans all the time. Like one of the things I like about Tucker is I like to hear people shit on Mitch McConnell and
hell yeah,
But like Hannity, it's whatever the Republican Party needs that day is what comes out of Hannity's mouth. It's like magic.
So one of the weird things about Tucker over the years is that he'd have like Glenn Greenwald on or Matt Taibbi on or people who weren't going along with the alphabet agency narratives and all that sorts of stuff. So this guy here, I've mentioned before, Bennett's phylactery. He is a just random Twitter guy, and he's a Mormon, and he's kind of creating this whole thing of like some separate economy outside of the regular economy where you could be a person who lives in both economies. Like it's not supposed to be some secret underground separate economy. It's just just in case this stuff goes belly up economy. But it's kind of funny because he's a Twitter personality, but he's not involved with this Jerry Springer Mormon ex-Mormon world of Twitter stuff. He's just kind of known as like a reactionary to the wider world. But he got famous because Tucker read one of his tweets, the same way Aaron McIntyre got famous because Tucker read one of his tweets. And here's what he said in this tweet, because it kind of leads into the Mary Harrington stuff a little bit and the Noah Harari.
Not on Tucker today. Actually, we'll have that as the last question. I want to get your general Tucker thoughts. But before that, what was the tweet that Tucker read on his show of yours?
It was something to do with homeschooling, and it was I can't remember what was happening, but it was basically like just some politicians being really out of touch about the subject of homeschooling. And I think what I said was maybe giving all of our society's power to childless, careerist, computer brain sociopaths was a bad idea.
And that leads to maybe, baby. But that so I've been reading and I'm almost done with Sapiens, and I think that describes pretty well Noah Harari, which I know Bill Real. I don't see an episode where he doesn't mention Sapiens, but
dude, that's got to be like the one book he's read in the last fucking decade, and it's because he heard Obama bitching about or cucking for it. It's funny you mentioned we might talk about Harari in this podcast, and so I was like, well, I
got the video, yeah, that you sent.
I've read a little bit. I've read like half of Sapiens, and it's such base level shit. But then I listened to some of his interviews. And it's funny because I typed in Noah Harari interview, and like the third thing on the list was him being interviewed by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I was like, that's perfect. That's the perfect person to interview. Harari.
I think that thing that Bennett's phylactery said describes him better, because like this isn't James Lindsay will talk about him because this guy is basically Klaus Schwab's right hand man, right? And he's the person who's kind of pushing the technocracy level end of the World Economic Forum type crap and all that stuff. And this is the guy who says humans are just useless eaters and all that sorts of stuff. And when you listen to his book, because he calls balls and strikes a little bit better than the average like critical theorist, right? Like he'll talk about some pros of capitalism, he'll talk about some negatives of socialism and all that sorts of deal. But you can really see that it is a computer-brained sociopath, if that makes any sense. Like he's absolutely sure that he can resolve humanity, and part of what he's going to resolve of it is that there should be less of us. And it's not out of like some sort of like heartfelt place or something like that. But you sent this video. I haven't watched this yet. Let's see what it is. Sapiens. It definitely went down the route of like colonialism all bad, although most of those like critical theorists, like post-colonialist books, will just say straight bad, but he'll mention like positives of like the colonialist people helping them discover their own past that they didn't know about. Like the Rosetta Stone was discovered by colonialists, and everything that was learned from the Rosetta Stone in pre-Columbian everything was thanks to the colonialists going and doing the research and figuring it out. It was just buried and gone to those civilizations. And he'll point that out.
Germans that had decoded the Mayan alphabet or the Mayan writing system.
It was colonialists who cared about the past, who cared to look into stuff and figure out what things were.
Talk about a fun job that would be.
But there's a little bit of this. He's got a little bit of the noble savage stuff going on.
Well, so what? This is just funny. This little short. Just play the whole thing because you'll never guess how stupid it is.
So he's basically showing the noble savage stuff first for those not looking.
No, it's showing history. It's like, look, this is how you view history, and then this is how history really is.
What planet is this guy on?
No,
who is out there saying, "Oh no, history is all glorious and there was nothing to be ashamed of"?
I never learned that. That's a whole.
Well, it
reminds me of like when my sister says feminism is the radical belief that women are human. Like, who the fuck are you arguing with?
These kind of more mechanistic brain technological people, which are I think maybe a bigger fear than what I mean. They see critical theorists and all this stuff in the colleges is useful, but this is really the Silicon Valley brain that we're talking about here, which is I think Mary Harrington actually critiques really well in a weird way. But these guys are more pushing the idea that there's got to be less than us, but we got to do it in this techno way, and because everything was fine until we became colonialists and the population exploded. Like he makes a case for in his book how the agricultural revolution was the worst thing to ever happen to humanity.
His agricultural revolution shit is complete nonsense. It's oh my god, it's so funny. I listened to an interview where he talked about the agricultural revolution is a fraud, is what he said. And the reason he said that is because what was really good for like pharaohs and shit like that, but it wasn't very good for the farmers. It was tedious and boring.
Guys, what's going on in the comments here?
I don't know. It looks like there's a spammer or something. I'll see if I can
Well, I think he's teaching us about Jesus.
I don't know if that's just like a different language though.
It's Hebrew.
Oh, can you
I
translate?
recognize Hebrew. I don't know.
Maybe it's not something. I don't know. I won't ban it unless it's something weird. Anyway, going on with this.
Talking about sexy singles.
So part of like the agricultural revolution is bad because now there's just more humans, and then all we do is just link ourselves to survival of continuously getting more food, and then we don't realize that we're chained to a useless eating existence.
But it's not a graphic novel.
Did they turn it into one? They might have turned it into one.
Oh, I guess maybe. But anyway, this was just funny to me because it reminds me of the whole critical race theory argument where they're like, "Oh, you're bothered that we're now teaching real history. We're teaching that slavery wasn't just happiness." It's like, who learned that slavery was happiness? Because I didn't. I'm in ultra Republican southeastern Idaho. All right. And I remember learning about the inhumane conditions on slave ships in elementary school, where people are shoulder to shoulder, getting sick, going across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas, and then the ship sinks and they just abandon the slaves to drown. I learned that as a kid. This isn't about being comfortable with these stupid facts.
I was born just 2 years after the church finally changed their blacks in the priesthood ban, and I was raised in Utah, and the only message I ever got from family, school, and church was that racism was a moral evil. That's the only message I ever got, and I agree with it. I think they were right. You know, and like, because I was actually talking with a friend. I was talking with a guy at work who's, like maybe 10 years older than me, and he's from Louisiana, and he was saying like, "Wow, look, I grew up around some real racists," and I'm like, "Well, okay, I believe you, but I'm telling you, my whole life experience was just that. Every message I got from all of my institutions was that racism was a moral evil and stupid."
So I've been talking about this a little bit in the past, but we kind of pointed at it here though. But this episode by JJ McCullough, which he actually came out with an episode this week saying that he was gay. I had no idea that he was gay, but it wasn't coming out of the closet that he was gay. He was coming out saying it's annoying being gay because everybody only wants to associate you with being gay, and I hate that. And he had a pretty good episode.
What a strange way to be.
Yeah. But this idea on postmodernism. So there's the postmodernism. There's capital P postmodernism, which is the stuff that is the French stuff from like 68. It kind of goes off of a revolution that failed and they got depressed about that revolution that failed in France all the way through like the 80s a little bit. That's capital P postmodernism that we know through like Foucault and Lyotard and all those sorts of guys. But there's a postmodernism, which is just looking at the concept of moving outside of modernism and becoming skeptical of modernism. And usually when I'm kind of talking about right-wing postmodernism, this is the type of postmodern, although they'll use some Foucault or whatever. But you can even say anybody who's skeptical of modernism being the end all is also postmodernist a little bit. And this picture kind of shows it really good right here. The whole episode shows it really well. But this picture kind of shows like how like the pre-modern era, you have this cup. Somebody figured out how to get a cup, but the cup's over adorned. It's like filled up with all this unnecessary adornment around the cup. You can like think about like that as maybe like that's the religious thing, right? There's this over adornment of it's unnecessary, whatever on it. In the modern age, strips out just what's useful of the cup, and it's just this stripped out nothingness of a cup that you're done with that cup as soon as that drink's in your mouth. You don't need to keep that cup. In fact, you can get a new cup. In fact, we've mass produced that cup. Who cares about that cup? That cup's not close to my heart or whatever, which I can say you can have some skepticism for that because we've all obviously fallen in love with certain things in our modern era, right? But there might be some more reason to keep that pre-modern item as something.
There probably is, but this is such a sad example of me because looking at these cups, I have a bunch of coffee mugs. but there's one that's my favorite, right? I've got a coffee mug with my wife's face on it from her YouTube channel. I got a coffee mug that says sin juice as like a joke for Mormonism. I got a bunch of blue coffee mugs that are shaped fancily. And then I got this coffee mug that's exactly the shape of that modern green one. And it just has my stupid company name on it.
And you love it.
And I love it. And it's my coffee. It's the one I grab. If I have a choice of all of them, I always grab that one. And it's because it might actually run against the whole modern narrative because it's what I grew up with. I grew up with my grandpa drinking coffee and drinking out of these weird cups with faded brand logos on them.
You're hitting on my and actually some other people kind of pointing this out, but you're hitting on what I said on the very first episode where Kevin and I kind of tried to describe what these right-wing postmodernists are skeptical of and that sort of deal. But one of the pushbacks I have is that screw you that we haven't been real with these modernist items, and that pushes back towards you remember we went over these liminal spaces, like this liminal, like if you but part of what the concept of all this stuff is, like, it's a nostalgia for modernist places. Does that make sense? It's like it's not a nostalgia for pre-modern places, like the picture of the kid in the kid in the 90s bedroom with the 90s video games and the 90s cheap plastic toys. And you look at all that stuff, and some Adorno who is skeptical of the modern era, or the postmodernists who are skeptical of the modern era, would say that kid has false consciousness. He can't have been in love with that room and in love with that 90s and in love with that life. That was all fake plastic consumption, right? But we who lived through it can sit and put the birdie finger up and say, no, screw you. I loved it. What I loved was real. My attachment to it was real. And beyond my attachment to it being all real, we were able to have authentic, real, whatever spiritual or life or love or connection experiences within that. Screw your claims, right? But I'm still just going off of what their criticisms are. And this is a little bit that comes out of what I was telling you guys is Marxist alienation theory. And some of these guys jump off of saying the one thing that Marx kind of got right was alienation theory, that over time you get alienated from your items, you get alienated from your job, you get alienated from these experiences, and it just becomes these pieces of utility, and then you get reified as a piece of utility, right? So what is Chris? But Chris is just an HR director. You get reified, I'm just an HR, I'm just my utility. What is Flip? Flip, he sells the alcohol. He's just an alcohol seller. You know, that's the Marxist alienation claim, that you get stripped of your meaning the same way that cup got stripped of its meaning, right? And then the postmodernists come along, not the Foucauldian postmodernists, but these postmodernists come along and say, well, let's try to reinvent and get back at some of this, right? But when they start going and trying to grab it again, it gets weird, right? It gets goofy. It gets like, some of the deal is like, one of the things I always bring up, because it's actually a point that Oswald Spengler make, is like there used to be a pre-modern thought of what like a body of water that people were attached to was. And the modernist era said, the pre-modern people said, let's just use one concept. There's fairies in that lake, and those fairies are maybe even our ancestors. So they treat that lake in a certain way because they have this extra adornment that's not real, right? And then the modernists come along and say, that's all crap. This lake is exactly this much water, and we can use it to make I don't know what out of it. We can make a dam out of it, and we can get electricity out of it, and we can use this much water out of it, and we can make our alfalfa and like triple and double and just utility, right? And then at some point they say, wait a minute, we've stripped all the meaning of everything, at least some people nostalgic for the past or whatever. And they say, well, we've got to reinvent this, and we got to grab onto this again and say, wait a second here. And so, but they can't just become pre-modern again. They have to go through, right? They can't just like, it's a little bit of those pragmatist arguments. Like, we can't just imagine the fairies are there again. But some people say, no, just we'll pretend to imagine the fairies again. But one way or the other, it looks like this goofy third cup, right? As it starts getting goofy, you know?
Yeah.
And well, one of Oswald Spengler's arguments is that societies just go through that, and it happened before, and it'll happen again. But anyway, let's see here. just going to Mary Harrington. So Mary Harrington, this is we'll end on this thing here. This is Michael Nana. Michael Nana is the guy who made the grievance paper documentary.
Right? Yeah. Wait, did that documentary ever actually happen?
Yeah, it's out. It's just done in parts. This is it. Part 1, part 2, part 3, and you got to watch it on his channel. But
I thought COVID put the brakes on it, but I guess COVID's over.
No, it's there. It doesn't come out like a movie documentary, but it's here. But the thing is, it's way more produced than your average YouTube video, right? So you're watching a movie if you watch these whole things, right? So he's obviously doing a movie here with Mary Harrington, because this just says it's part 1. And I pointed to Mary Harrington before too, because she's this lady who was this feminist who went all the way through the hard feminist stuff. She's the one who all of her old feminist friends, not a single one of them is not trans anymore, and all that sort of stuff. And then she went the other direction. She went the right-wing reactionary postmodern direction of, I went through that whole entire thing in 10 years, that whole entire thing, and now I'm going to go get married and become a trad wife type deal, type stuff, after having come through the entire super feminist thing, right? Like real deal. And all the Marxism, all the postmodernism, all that sorts of stuff. And so here she goes describing it, and she's partially describing this techno thing, which if you think about it, she calls the cyborg theocracy. She's talking a little bit about how the pill was, in a way, turning women into the first cyborgs in a sort of way.
Was that her, or was it somebody else that said, maybe it was her, but I heard some lady talking about how the birth control pill was the first truly transhumanist technology.
It's her. That's her.
Oh, okay, that was her. Yeah.
So she's got a book coming out, and it's called like Reactionary Feminism or something like that. And so she's kind of doing what all these other guys are doing, but having come through the whole academics, Blue Church Cathedral. Anyway, I'll just show like a little clip of this. And it's funny because she says, well, she went and had a baby and had a kid and realized that it wasn't at all like the feminist thing. And wait a minute, actually, if we are feminists, this is how we should be going, because this is what women actually want, type stuff, And so it's like this weird other side. It's the same thing Nick Land and Mark Fisher went through, like capitalist realism. It's kind of what I've been telling people, is like there's like a whole level of people who went all the way through this and are on the other side of it, and they went through it on the left wing, and now they're getting to the other side of it, and it's happening. A little bit happened with a bunch of those climate change guys who, what's his name, Schellenberger and Lomborg and all those sorts of guys. They were all climate activists first, and they're going almost all the way through it back to reality, but they still understand the whole entire leftist theorization of the whole entire thing, which it gets real interesting to listen to them, because she's gonna describe it a little bit here, and we'll end on this.
Think about it only in terms of the way.
Where's the volume? Is that in fast speed? No, she just talks fast.
Thing is, and think about it only in terms of the way it can be used. I mean, if we're sitting in this cute house, and outside there's a coop with some chickens in, right? I have chickens at home. You can spend a lot of time observing chickens and the way they interact with each other and their little chickeny social order and the way they scratch and peck. And, they're kind of basic, but also kind of endearing creatures.
My dad says the funniest thing he ever saw in his life was drunk chickens.
What did they eat?
Because if the grain gets wet, it can ferment. And if you don't notice it, you feed the chickens, it'll get them drunk.
Marty's right here that Boyce is doing a good series too. Boyce has been talking to a lot of these people, and these are some of the people that James Lindsay just shuts down. He just doesn't even want to hear them, and he's bad at it, But I think, but he does have good criticisms of them. It's just he doesn't hear their criticisms of what the liberal stuff side, which there's good criticisms in it, But
contemplating the chickenness of a chicken if you want to. But if you're a factory farmer, that's not how you look at chickens at all, right? You look at them as production units.
Jesus.
Ugh.
You look at them as units of egg production or units of meat production, which must be optimized with the minimal financial input and the maximum output and the maximum profit margin.
Yummy chicken.
You know, when I watch shit like this, I think maybe the idea that I need to have is I should be willing to eat meat if I'm willing to kill it.
Rather than looking at the being of a chicken.
And I think it's less. I think it's less that I'm willing to kill chicken, and it's less that I'm unwilling to kill chicken, and more that I'm too lazy. You know?
Well, no, like I mean, this is one of the great ironies, though, about so much of this stuff is that the people who are loudest in opposition against factory farming are also people who are probably loudest complaining about carbon footprints. Where it's like, yeah, if you care about the environment, then you should be for factory farming because it is enormously efficient. And growing chickens in your backyard and slaughtering them yourself, I mean, it might make you feel good, but it's going to have a far bigger carbon imprint than buying
non-local is more efficient too.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I find things like trophy hunting to be distasteful. Like I don't want to make it illegal.
I used to until I learned what it was about. I used to think that, and then
I get it. I understand that it brings in a lot of money for local economies, and that it can be
not even that it brings in, like,
I'm not super against it. I just think that if I'm a hunter, I kind of want to be the guy that sort of like prays over the corpse of the deer that he just killed, and is grateful for it. Like, thanks God for it, or whatever it is.
It was working at the Salt Palace, doing convention catering, where Chris was the HR guy. We did the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo every year. And then I was in the room when they auctioned off those trophy tags. And when you find out what those people pay for that, and you go, oh, because all of that money goes to conservation. Like, you know, because that thing's like, oh, that son of a bitch just was after a trophy. He paid $350,000 fucking dollars for the chance at the trophy. Because if you don't get the trophy, you don't get your money back.
No, I get that, and that's why I'm not against shit like that. I think on a societal level, I'm fine with that. On a personal level, I think I don't want to do things like that. I think I want to hunt. I want to get into hunting, and I want, when I hunt, I want the kill to be this somber occasion where I acknowledge.
You want to hunt like Joe Rogan,
but she's invoking. But do you see, like, she's invoking you exactly what she's trying to invoke in you? Do you see what I mean? It's like there was like the pre-modern, like we had a chicken, we had a love for chicken, or thought of the chicken, or they were your chickens or something like that, and then it turned into this modernist thing that you're just detached from it and don't even know what's going on with it. And now it's like saying, like, wait a minute, let's attach back into it. But you're saying, like, I got to pray over the thing, or I got to do something like that. But it's like, in a weird way, you're doing like that post-modern trad negotiation, you know what I mean?
Well, sort of. I mean, man, I grew up on Lion King, Mufasa explaining the circle of life to his son. And I like that shit, you know? I like him saying, like, look, buddy, be humble. You're a lion, but still be humble. One day the antelope will eat you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's invoking, because it's kind of saying, like, the modern stuff is like getting away from what's real in a weird way. So in a weird way, when you got away from the over adornment, which was fake, you also got away from what's real in a weird way. You know, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of what she's invoking. But I mean, it gets into like how like the trans stuff and the cyborg stuff plays into it here, because it's like one of the things she found out as a feminist, as a hard feminist, that having a baby was part of the hard feminist mother experience, because not only a baby is created when a baby is had, a mother is created when a baby is had. And that's part of the feminist, that's part of the female experience, the female, you know, and so many people are trying to cyborg that out of the female experience. And it's like your modernist take on what feminism was the wrong one. and you guys kind of don't realize that your technocracy is, you are your own critique of yourself. So she went all the way down the road of her own critiques and realized that it should have pushed back to a more holistic view of what the woman was, instead of this technocratic wackadooiness that comes out of stuff.
You're looking at it as standing reserve, as a resource to be utilized. And from his perspective, that's the technological mindset is just looking at the whole world in that way, as a set of resources that you can use. And I would argue that's what's distinct about the cyborg era is that we've moved from thinking about the material and the animal world in those terms to looking at people in that way as well, and even commodifying ourselves in that way.
I guess this is what I meant before about technology being nothing, because if you're moving towards technology being the ground of everything, then you're moving away from human nature.
Yes, absolutely.
So my,
I guess, remind me to come back to that because I have a lot more to say about that.
Go on. I don't want, you're on these beautiful flows, so go.
Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about the relation between technology and human nature, I mean, another one of my working hypotheses about cyborg theocracy, or the cyborg theology, is that it's one of its fundamental tenets is that there is no such thing
as a human nature.
There is no such thing as human nature, and in fact, to assert that
and this is no Harari and what he's pushing, and what most of those, like I pulled up that quote from Bennett's phylactery, like maybe we shouldn't have sociopathic computer brains in charge of stuff.
No such thing as human nature. How disconnected from life do you have to be to say something that ridiculous?
That's absurd. It's racist, it's sexist, it's oppressive.
Like, just watch kindergartners for 15 minutes and tell me there's no such thing as human nature. Jesus Christ, what is
that's part of what he's saying is like they say it's racist, and like a lot of it is freaking out about nature. It's freaking out about what's just there, and part of what we're here saying is like, guys, it's just there. Deal with what's there. And all of it's a revolt of what's there.
It immediately imposes a set of historically oppressive constraints on us that also limits what we what we are or what we could become, and that asymmetrically oppresses different classes of people along lines which go all the way back into history. And I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the argument.
Definitely, yeah. It's essentially just a blank slatist underpinning of the whole thing.
But if you, blank slatism, the sort of Rousseau-esque idea that we come into the world perfect and then culture ruins us. If you look at what it does in the context, if you look at what it enables in the context of a high-tech world. If we're blank slates, then in theory, there's no reason, for example, why we shouldn't become cyborgs. There's no reason why we shouldn't splice human DNA with a pig or a monkey. Why not? I mean, why shouldn't we have skin grafts made of, from why shouldn't we graft fish skin onto ourselves? Why shouldn't we implant microchips in our brains? Why shouldn't we biohack ourselves? Why shouldn't we genetically optimize embryos?
Organisms are algorithms. This is the big insight of
there he is.
Organisms are algorithms.
This is the Sapiens guy.
Guys, did you know that money isn't like a nature concept? Like
what?
We just create. No, I'm serious, man. We just create money.
Seriously?
And it's like a trust thing. Like you got to just trust people that money's gonna mean something. Oh.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let's finish that up. But
life sciences, that organisms, whether viruses or bananas or humans, they are really just biochemical algorithms. And we are
that's how he views the world. And this is the guy who's one of the right-hand mans of what those World Economic Forum people, and this is how he views humans. He views humans how those humans view how we've been trained to view those chickens. He just you can hear it if you listen to Sapiens all the way through and know this about this guy. You will hear that book very differently, and you'll be far less impressed. Which I don't know why people are impressed with it anyway, because like Jared said, so much of it is like history 101. Like we had that point of like, I told you guys, who was the one person who conquered more people than any other people? Money. Bam, bam, bam. And it's like it's full of deepities like that. But at the same time, you realize you're listening to a sociopathic computer brain, even though it sounds nice and polite or whatever.
Learning how to
design. Yeah, he doesn't.
Is it like when you say, because like you tried rereading Foucault, and like his book on sexuality is just like, and here's a thing. Here's a historical factoid about sexuality, and here's a historical factoid about sexuality, and here's a historical factoid about sexuality, and here's a historical factoid about, and it's just a list.
Which is Dan. You hear Dan.
It's just a list.
You hear Dan do that. But just to like imagine him do it for like 10 hours straight, and then at the end of it say, "So who's to say what's to say? We negotiate it, and we should negotiate it for the oppressed." And that's what it is. And the most oppressed thing is us pederasts.
These algorithms, by hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack,
he is absolutely positive that that they will in his lifetime conquer death. And he was already saying this 10 years ago in that Sapiens book.
Good luck.
But I guess he's got like this dudes. But part of what their whole idea with that is like, if they're going to conquer death, we can't have so many humans around.
Something.
I hope I don't die before Yuval Harari.
And I guess and guess whose job will be to decide who gets to not be born anymore.
Natural selection with evolution by intelligent design, not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design.
So there's no coherent reason why you should.
What is their theology for a good life in all this pleasure, just unmitigated pleasure?
I mean, it depends who you ask, but probably the most coherent theories which are emerging around this are coming out of Silicon Valley thinkers who talk about. I mean, I would look in biohacking, long-termism, and effective altruism are probably the most coherent frameworks for thinking about what the good life is in the context of having abolished human nature.
Part of this is
that effective altruism is 100% what created that stupid bank that blew up. Those guys did that off of the lie of effective altruism.
Is the intersectional theory, which is I've been looking very closely at the source material, the grievance studies stuff within academia, and then the activist movement that's built on top of that. To me, that's the narrow definition of woke. But not everyone is liberated inside that movement. It's kind of liberation reparations or a caste system or something like that. So where does the intersectional movement fit into this, in your view?
Where does the intersectional thing fit into all of this? I suppose one way of looking at it might be to say that the intersectional theory is what happens when the aspiration for total liberation underwritten by technology collides with reality.
Yes. And this is one of the things James Lindsay's been on about, and it's one of the things too, is that there is an underlying, and Flip's been on about it too, is there's a religious claim underneath it. That you need to be liberated from your body because there's a dualism of what you are and what your body actually is.
Yeah. I'm oppressed, therefore I am, because you're in a space of nothingness.
Right. You're in a space of nothingness, and there are no moral values. There's no nothing. And yet it remains manifestly true that no matter how hard we try and liberate people, they stay stubbornly not liberated. We're still governed by the givens of our existence. And so there's this sort of enraged response to that.
Oh my God, I believe in equal rights. Oh my God, I believe that homophobia shouldn't be allowed. Oh my God, I believe that white men shouldn't dictate a fucking woman's place in the world. You fucking douchebag.
A charitable read we could put on what's going on with what gets critiqued as wokeness is that it's a sincere effort and genuinely well-meaning effort by a lot of people to reconcile a profoundly amoral worldview with a desire to make the world better.
I believe deeply in the critical and audacious goal of eliminating.
I think that's so brilliant. It's like a profoundly amoral worldview with a decisive aim to make the world better. Like, what? But that's exactly like the confusion we're living in.
Eliminating racism and violence in our world. I believe we're all privileged to engage in that work in a learning community that wants to be better. And I believe we have the will to do so. Thank you for coming today.
And you come up with this very sort of mechanistic way of grading people according to their oppressions, and this very dehumanizing way of characterizing people according to their intersecting identity classes, and make a sincere effort to make the world a better place based on that framework. And you might call it it's a moral response to a radically amoral situation, or it's an effort to make a moral response to a radically amoral terrain.
So, okay,
which is what Dan is doing.
We can put the intersectional stuff aside because that's what I've been looking at very closely, and more I realize it's only a small part of a bigger thing. So you said the moral order that.
So I mean that's as far I want to go with that, but that series is going to be good. But I mean, if you kind of get like what the point is, and she's got that book coming out talking about it too, but it kind of starts framing better the stuff that I'm saying, like the arguments from a reactionary side that are getting way stronger and smarter than the other academic Dan side has ever been. And it's one of the things that I pointed in that video last week of that he gets to is that there's a weird divide between these techno computer brains and the intersectional side. They're not exactly lining up, and they can't exactly line up, and they kind of know that they can't. It's like if you listen to Harari, it's like they're a little bit, but I feel that when I listen to Larsen and DeLynn and all those guys too, it's the same thing. It's what we've been pointing at, is that you guys can't reconcile your science brains and your moral brains. You cannot reconcile them. This cannot be reconciled. Amazing Atheist cannot reconcile it. Your guys' weird, moral, dualistic body of like what you are and what you aren't, and your body, your transhumanist stuff cannot be reconciled with your science screaming. Your data streaming, you guys, it's impossible. And that's what we're jabbing at. That's what we're trying to jab at. And the dualistic, like so much that it's a complete amoral side, that science side. And then the other side is a wackadoo moral that's a religiosity that it's what we're trying to map out. I don't know how else to say it, because it's like I feel like we've been spending a year trying to point it out, if that makes sense. Is any of that getting any clearer?
Yeah, that's as clear as church.
Yeah.
Shit.
Mary Harrington reminds me a bit of Ted Kaczynski in her conclusion. Well, Ted.
What is she, based as fuck?
Uncle Ted. Yeah, Ted had weird, but I mean, he was talking about the technocracy that we're falling down. But I mean, at the same time, too, if you look at Nick Land and all these different people, they were all pointing at the technocracy is coming. And sooner or later, if it goes that far down that road, I mean, what Nick Land says is that sooner or later, even Marshall McLuhan said this when he was talking about communications, is sooner or later it becomes Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, that we're all just the technology is what's memeing, the technology is what's genes, the technology is what's reproducing, and we're in the way of it. And that's their prediction of that sort of stuff. And I think there's enough to be concerned about with it. Although Vervaeke had a really good episode this week about his fears and what's overblown about the AI stuff. And that's a guy who knows a whole lot about the AI stuff, and he's definitely fearful of it and definitely thinks it's overblown at the same time. But this is all stuff that I think is way more interesting and everybody should be thinking about, rather than just going back over the Kinderhook plates again. Or, I don't know, John Larsen.
What is there to talk about Mormonism? We talked about all the stuff.
John Larsen did another episode
Mormon stories
on let's categorize it if it's a cult. And sure, but we got cults everywhere.
Yeah.
It turns out if it's culty, it tries to regulate your behavior. I wrote that in a groundbreaking essay that I did. And let's talk about it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my whole pontification on that. But part of what I would love is like, we got all these smart people and all these people who kind of realize it. And I think everybody should be kind of getting into what those arguments are, because it's like getting out ahead of the game a little bit, when the rest of the people are just sitting there thinking that, like, my complaint about Larsen is he still thinks the academy is what it was in whatever 1970, whatever. And he doesn't realize that the place is taken over by technocrats and weird moralistic intersectionalists, and you're behind the game, like Mormons always are, right? We're behind the game. But it'd be nice if everybody were thinking and talking about the actual problems going on, rather than just sitting there worried about Mormonism, that the worst thing it ever did was make us feel bad about masturbating. I don't want to say it's the worst thing it ever did, but
it feels like it's probably I don't know. I hated my mission a lot, so I guess there's that.
But part of what the whole thing is, part of what the whole argument is you got to deal with this thing of, we'll use religious language for it. The hearts of the children turn to their fathers, or the sense of like, we got to look back at the pre-modern thing and think they didn't have it all wrong, but they didn't have it all right either. But at the same time too, we're in this weird moment of if we just turn everything into a modernist mechanistic science thing, we got problems too. But then my argument that I said from the beginning, that I still hold, I hold to the concept of the modernist liberal time of that picture that Jonathan shared, that, I mean, we had at our podcast, of a kid in the 90s being in a room that's totally plastic and totally Nintendo and totally all this stuff, and that being real. There was something real there. There was something fully soulful there. It wasn't just mechanistic nothingness. And but how do we reconcile it all? We don't. We do. We try.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm getting at. And that's what I'm getting toward, is like, it really does seem that that the conservative, the old world thing of like, well, focus on yourself, then your family, and like, there's a hierarchy of what you should be worried about, and the issues of planetary oppression should be further down than just take care of your damn self.
That's for sure too. But I think part of what's brought up in those arguments is just realizing how you're perceiving things and how you're trained to perceive things, and that maybe we are being trained to kind of perceive things as utilitarian, as we don't like the top dogs being. Maybe we should not the way a leftist tells us to value the Great Salt Lake, but the way a pre-modernist valued the Great Salt Lake, if that makes any sense.
By the way, it's filling up.
Yeah, it's full. I saw some pictures.
Probably because of democratic policies.
John Larsen and his friends, because of their amazing rhetoric, they made the snow fall. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, I mean, statistically, we knew it was coming because we are like starting in about 2000, Utah and most of the West are in a millennial drought. And millennial droughts come to an end.
Yeah.
and things go back.
Only if you stop driving your Hummer.
Oh, that's right.
Well, one of the premises that he had that just can't be true that comes out of that, because I mean, I could see they have arguments that this happens every 10 years or it happens every 40 years. But one of the main arguments they were making is that if there was no Salt Lake, there'd be almost no snow here because it all relies on lake effect. But that makes no sense with this year. If that lake was at its lowest ever, how did it, when that lake was at its lowest ever, did we have a record year? So that can't be the reason for snow.
Yeah.
So one of their premises is off. Right?
It turns out weather is immensely complex. Who could have guessed?
Well, Noah Harari in that book says they can measure that down to this. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But
all
right,
Did
everybody.
we do it?
I think that we.
You guys ever play the old Mega Man games?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, Mega Man 2. One of the greatest video games of all time. Although it is broken because you get Metal Man right away, and then you use Metal Man's special power, and he gets you through 90% of the game.
Okay, because Mega Man 3 was my game when I was a kid. That's
a good one.
My earliest memories, and in fact, the soundtrack, I love it so much.
They all have good soundtracks.
They do. But I listened to the soundtrack. This guy did a guitar-based version of the soundtrack of Mega Man 3. And I'm listening to it right now. Every time when the stream is coming to a close, I listen to it. I'll send it to you.
I could sing some Mega Man 2 right now.
The X series on SNES.
I could sing some
really
2
good.
right now.
Oh, they were good. The soundtracks were better on the original series.
I told you kind of recently that one of the video games that I had to go back and beat because it was like an itch in my side that I never beat it was Mega Man 1. Like sometime a while back.
I was telling it, we were talking about how I autistically power through video games. It's the only thing I ever persevere in is video games. and you were like, isn't there any video game you didn't beat? And I was like, well, Mega Man 3. But I was 6.
Hard.
You never beat 3?
I probably beat it at one point, but like with my dad and uncle.
Did you ever play Mega Man 8 on original PlayStation?
Yeah.
I just remember that one stood out to me because it was so happy. It was like bizarrely, like all colorful and clouds.
And it was a lot easier.
I have 11 on Switch and loved it.
I think I have 10 on Switch.
Oh, they made an 11?
But yeah, I have a PlayStation that has 1 through 6, and a lot of people didn't realize that there was like 4, 5, and 6 on the NES because they still kept coming out after the SNES was up, and they were still pretty good games. And then there was another one made, an NES version made just like 5 years ago or something like that.
It was the Mighty Number 9, but it was a huge disappointment. Everybody hated it.
There was one just like 4 or 5 years ago that was made in the original NES style, and it was hard as shit.
But that one doesn't eat my side. Because the thing is, so the original creator got like forced out of Capcom or something, and then he crowdfunded the game, and it got an enormous amount of crowdfunding, and then it was an enormous disappointment to everybody.
Yeah, I love all the Mega Man games. Like I love Mega Man Legends.
I love that somebody exists that they would go through all the trouble to do this. To actually,
2 is the one.
This is actually
the one that I beat.
And I'm pretty sure the guy's Brazilian too.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
2 is the one that I've beaten more than 10 times, and I could beat it right now. I haven't played it in forever. I could beat it right now. I can think of where to go right now.
I've beaten all of 3 pretty much a million times. I don't know how many times I beat. I know I've beaten it, but it was always with the help of my dad and uncle because I was like 6 years old when I played it. But I remember it perfectly.
Here's the problem with the Mega Man games, man, is that the reason number 1 was hard was that piece of shit Yellow Devil, and
no, the Yellow Devil was a pain in the ass.
And they bring that Yellow Devil back in a bunch of like, oh, here he is for nostalgia. It's like, oh, stop bringing back the Yellow Devil. And he's in like Mega Man 11 and all that stuff. And what I had to get past to beat Mega Man 1 was figure out how to do the pattern of that stupid Yellow Devil. And then I had to. Now I can beat him because, like in a bunch of other games, when it comes back up, I can do that Yellow Devil again. But I hate the Yellow freaking Devil. I don't want to play it. And Mega Man 2 has no Yellow Devil. I can't remember if he's in 3 or not. But.
He is. He's definitely in 3.
Mega Man 2, 3, Mega Man DOS, Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge, Mega Man 4, Mega Man 2.
There's a whole Mega Man X series.
Mega Man
like a series
5.
with that Mega Man with the sword more. Oh,
Zero.
But man, the Super Nintendo Mega Man I can beat right now too, and that one I can beat without
the Mega Man X
like
series, right?
The Super Nintendo version I can almost speed run.
The X series isn't as difficult. I liked it better when I was a kid because it looked cooler.
Have you guys ever watched any speedrunners?
Oh fuck!
Only a little bit.
Watch the channel Summoning Salt. Summoning Salt has a good channel about all the speedrunning records and stuff like that.
You gotta watch the speed runs of Breath of the Wild. They're insane, especially the.
I can't watch them until I play that game. I haven't played.
There's
it yet.
a whole channel. No, you could watch those because it won't spoil anything of that game because they've broken it so hard that it won't even tell you anything about what's going on with the game. You'd have to play the game to understand just how much they skipped and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they skipped all that. But I don't recognize the song. I think I only played Mega Man 3 once or twice.
Oh my god, this is bringing it back.
I love this fucking cover.
Wow.
I like to listen to like Zelda covers on.
It's every single time we stream. I listen to this at the very end.
We should make it our theme music.
I put it very low in the background so I can still talk. But
we probably get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's or not. This is what we should end on though. Let me just go here real quick. Hold on 1 second. Hi.
Troy over there calling us video game nerds.
We are.
I've never made a video game, nerd.
Yeah, we never got paid to play them as a.
Also, Troy, thanks for the video game. I love your video.
I wish
we never got health insurance along with our video games.
I wish I could be more of a nerd, but I will be when Tears of the Kingdom come out.
I feel happy whenever Troy comments because I'm like, oh man, I love that fucking game that he made.
I still haven't found a PS5. God dang it.
That sucks because his Troy's game is great. That's
but
how I
pretty
know
soon I'll be
Hogwarts.
I will probably be lost most of the summer in Tears of the Kingdom, I'm guessing. Well, who knows how long it'll take.
We're like a month off.
Less. All right, listen to this.
And one more thing. Take care of yourself and each other.
I forgot that's how he ended.
What a nice fella that Jerry Springer must have been.
What a
He's so altruistic.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. Jerry. All right. Thanks for hanging, guys. We made it right at 3 hours. Look at that. 2:58. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Warren's Choice, Fuzzy Slytherin Heart to know you liked it. I want to play it. Where's a PS5, Troy?
Yeah, Troy, give him a PS5.
I've literally gone to like 5 different stores. I mean, I never have enough time. So if I make a trek over to one, I look at it, I'm like, dang it, not this week. And then I look out like another week, but I haven't found one in a bunch of different stores. Anyway, 2:58:30, 3 hours.
Well,
Thanks, everybody.
Do you think anything will happen between now and Thursday?
This is a Costco. There'll be no more contention.
That's become my sign off.
I don't know if you guys know this, but a prophet of the Lord said no more contention, and as soon as that mandate came down, that mandate. I think it was probably recently. That mandate will clear out all the contention for us, and the channel's gonna be gone.
Is Forrest replying to his wife and getting like his text messages mixed up with his?
No, Costco is where I get a PS5.
Oh, that's what he's saying.
He's helping out.
I'm like, yeah, I was gonna go there on Sunday for cat litter. What are you saying? Like
the skeptic, which skeptic? Oh, with the Latter Day. Yeah, we'll go check it out. I saw his with his brother. That was a good one. Yeah. Good episode.
What's weird about Costco? There's so many things about Costco that blows my mind, and one of them is that the only
Technocracy. It's part of the techno overlord.
Apparently, because the only place in Utah to get quality bacalhau is fucking Costco. Go figure.
Just like in Idiocracy, man. That's in the future. That's going to be where you go to get your medicine. You go to get your doctor. You go to get your. It's a whole city.
Alrighty.
15-minute cities, which there was a whole post about that this week with Governor Cox getting confronted by people at 15-minute cities, and all these people on the Deseret Tribune saying 15-minute cities are a conspiracy theory. It's right-wing authoritarianism.
The problem is that there's a certain type of person that anytime they tell me that something is a conspiracy theory, I think, well, there must be something behind this.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people just tip you that off. It's really brave of you to stand with Ukraine, though, at this time, Jared. That's a tough position to take right now.
No, not a lot of people are standing with Ukraine these days.
Yeah.
But
you haven't changed. You don't have a Ukrainian flag. You didn't learn about where Ukraine was since the war started. So.
Yeah, there's also a type of person that if they take up like talking about the 15-minute thing, you'd be like, okay, guy, like the 15-minute city thing is real. That's all over the UN websites and the World Economic Forum, but you don't talk about it. You know what I mean? Because you kind of make it really look stupid. But it's real. But
totally.
But that's part of the game. So anyway, thanks everybody.
Alrighty. See you
later.
See ya.